Okay, well, without further ado, Joe Henson, good morning. Please get us started if you would.
Thank you, Shelley, and good morning, leaders. I'm Joe Henson, as Shelley mentioned, President and CEO of the Westchester Liberty Chamber Alliance. And welcome and thank you for attending our 7th annual Think Regional Summit, Growth Through Collaboration. This year's summit is focusing on the power of diversity, equity, and inclusion in driving economic growth. We're all here because we care about Southwestern Ohio's future. And your participation today and ongoing contributions throughout the year are key to our future success. Think Regional has presented many firsts over the years, and this year is no exception. This morning, we are presenting Think Regional virtually using a Zoom platform. To provide insight on helping us navigate today's program is Bob Viney, consultant to Think Regional. Bob, it's all yours.
Thanks, Joe. Good morning, everyone. I'm just going to go over for the speakers and for those in the audience how we will have questions, how we will have interaction. So the first is we will mute all participants during the presentations just so background noise doesn't interfere with the speaker during their time. And we'll ask people not to unmute themselves until you have been recognized to speak. We'll have time for a few questions after each presentation. And if you want to ask a question, please use the following steps. You can raise your hand by using the reactions button at the bottom of the Zoom screen, and we'll be able to see who has a question. And then, the second way is you can enter a question in the chat box also. Please wait to be called on to unmute yourself. And then when you are recognized, just unmute yourself. That's all the way over to the bottom left. And state your question or comment. And we'll have to end questions when it's time for the next presentation. There'll be an extended Q&A session at the end of all presentations. I think that time is about 11:40, and it's about a half an hour. And you'll be able to ask any questions that you haven't been able to state during the presentation at that time. And we'll use the speaker view during the presentations, which means that you won't see everybody, but you'll be able to focus on the speaker and what they are sharing. And then we'll shift to this view, the gallery view, when we have questions. So hopefully that will do the best that we can do with technology to create or replicate the kind of experience we would have had if we were all meeting together somewhere. So if anybody has any questions, post it in chat. I'll be monitoring it, and I'll try to help. Or you can text me at 513-335-8870, and I'll try to reply to you privately if you prefer. So that's it. Back to Joe.
Thank you, Bob. We appreciate the behind the scenes work that you do for Think Regional. Also, Tech Services, Tom Caper, we want to thank him for his support too today. To our Think Regional Summit in 2014, we asked attendees to let us know what regional topics they would like to hear more about at future events, focusing on improving our quality of life. To give us an overview of our first Think Regional Summit is Shelley Abrams, chairperson of Think Regional. She's going to give us an overview of our first several years of the different topics that we've had for Think Regional. Shelley, it's all yours.
Joe, thanks so much. This has been a special project for me, thanks to the Area Progress Council of Warren County and Arla and Bill Thornton for allowing me to serve as chairman for the Think Regional events since 2015. Actually, in 2014, we opened at the Kings Island Inn Resort, and we asked the audience to vote on the top 6 community issues that they felt Southwest Ohio needed to focus upon for increasing growth in economic development and quality of life. And as Joe mentioned, we started off with the underlying or overarching theme, I should say, of the value of collaboration. And I have a few mementos from past events that I'll hold up when I talk about it. We felt like collaboration in the best sense, meeting people from other counties, other parts of our region. Other parts of our region would be very helpful in looking at regional projects. So collaboration was the overarching theme. Then next, in the year 2015, we started focusing, and we were actually the cover story on the Business Journal. If you can see this, this was the SOCI director at that time, Sean, and then our own Bob Viney. And they were standing, I remember they searched for a place where you could see I-75 and I-71 signs posted at the same place. So this was the cover story, and the story was inside, but they were the cover gentlemen of the business magazine. Then, as we started through, we had other newspaper coverage in the Journal News, which has been a very good source for us. They did coverage in 2015, 2016, and all the way through 2019. I recall specifically when we discussed collaboration, the votes came in for cross-governmental connections, education and workforce development, healthcare collaboration, manufacturing and business collaboration, renewable energy and innovation and entrepreneurship, and then diversity, equity, and inclusion. And it's been interesting that the topics we have chosen have actually been very timely, which indeed our discussion today is very timely with current events. To give you a little update on some of our key speakers that we've had in the past and where they are today, Nan Whaley, as you know, is running for governor now. And she was one of our keynote speakers, along with David Mann, who was at that time vice mayor and is considering running for mayor of Cincinnati, as is Aftab Hurreville, who was a guest of Think Regional as well. And then Warren Davidson, who was one of our speakers that we interviewed and showed his videotape 2 years ago, is currently, of course, a congressman, but considering candidacy for governor. And last, but certainly not least, J.D. Vance, author of Hillbilly Elegy, the book, and the movie. And now, of course, we know that he is considering running for Ohio Senate, Rob Portman's seat. So we have been very fortunate in addressing issues of a timely nature with leaders that continue to pursue these very significant community issues locally, statewide, and nationally. So without further ado, let me turn the program back over to Joe Henson, and we will continue with our speakers today.
Thank you, Shelley, and we appreciate you. And if we were together, big round of applause for Shelley, all she's done to keep Think Regional going, given it the opportunities that we have today. So thank you, Shelley. We appreciate you.
Thank you, Joe.
You're welcome. We could not present the Think Regional Summits without the support of our sponsors. They're very important to us. We're fortunate to have AT&T and US Bank as sponsors. So first of all, I'd like to introduce AT&T, Mark Ramito. Mark, thank you as a regional director for AT&T. We appreciate you. The floor is yours.
Well, thanks, Joe. I appreciate that. And good morning, everyone. It's good to be with you here today. You know, the past year has certainly highlighted diversity, equity, and inclusion in so many aspects of our lives. And one of them being education. Education has been called, the great equalizer. But how well does that work if many of our students don't have access to the tools to get a 21st century education? And I have a cartoon here that's going to try to explain what I'm talking about here. If I can share my screen, and hopefully this works. I don't know if you see that or not, but it shows a cartoon that really just describes what I'm trying to talk about with the digital divide and the homework gap. And AT&T is trying to help in this regard by reorienting its philanthropic efforts toward addressing this issue of the digital divide and homework gap. And I'll just close here with a very brief video, and then I'll turn it back over to Joe, and hopefully if we can get this to up and spinning, and there we go. Looks like it's taken a while, but well, for some reason, maybe it's overloaded today, but there we go.
Mark, try hitting the reload button that's just above the
PowerPoint window too.
Thank you. I think you got the idea, but Joe, I'll turn it back over to you.
Okay, Mark, and if you get it up later, maybe we'll be able to take a look at it later in the program. Okay. We appreciate you, Mark, and we appreciate your continuous support of Think Regional. So thank you. Next, we have US Bank. Nikki Robinson's here. Hey, Nikki, welcome. Please tell us about what's going on with US Bank. Happy to have you as a sponsor.
Good morning, Joe. We're just excited to be here again this year and be able to participate in Think Regional. I believe this is my third or fourth year being able to attend and be a part of the event. And it's been an exciting time. We started this conversation last year on DEI when it wasn't as timely of a topic, but certainly relevant and something that we know regionally needed to be addressed. The bank has been doing great work in that space among our women's group and in those among the leaders across the company. So it's been great to be part of such an organization that cares not just about our employees, but about the communities as well. And then we all know the focus has shifted a lot over the last year, and we're actually headquarters in Minnesota, for those of you that don't know that. So it's been near and dear to our hearts to really address the things that have gone on specifically in that community. And our CEO has just done great things across the country to invest in those communities and invest in organizations that can make a difference. We're even shifting the way that we put funds in the market from a small business perspective, which is where my heart is. We've started to invest more in accelerator organizations that really target, DEI companies in each community as well. So I have a short video as well that I'm going to ask Tom to queue up for me so that I don't have technology issues. But thank you again for allowing me to participate.
This is the gap that opened up when everything shut down. But entrepreneurs never stopped and found solutions that kept them going. At US Bank, we can help you adapt and evolve your business, no matter what you're facing. Because when you close the gap, a world of possibility opens. US Bank, we'll get there together.
Great. Thank you, Nikki. We appreciate your support and US Bank's support also over the years. So thank you. As mentioned, today's focus is on the power of diversity, equity, and inclusion, and driving economic growth in Southwestern Ohio. We have an action-packed half a day in store for you. In a few minutes, we'll hear from our keynote speaker, Wendy Waters-Connell. Next, our guest panelists will share their viewpoints on the value of diversity, equity, and inclusion in our region, followed by a discussion and video on the tools of civic discourse led by the Southwestern Ohio chapter of Braver Angels. And we'll conclude with a Q&A session. So let's get started. To introduce our keynote speaker is Arla Tannehill from the Area Progress Council of Warren County. Arla, welcome.
Well, thank you all very much. It is with great enthusiasm that I introduce our keynote speaker to you this morning. You received your bio as an attachment to the link to this summit. Wendy is so much more than what's written on that document. I first met her in the fall of 2001 at the opening retreat of the first Leadership Warren County class. Of course, her looks are stunning, but that's not what makes her stand out in my memory. The class was standing at the climbing wall. We were to set a goal. Each person was asked how high we would climb. When it was Wendy's turn, she didn't hesitate. She stated in no uncertain terms, all the way, which she did in short order. She rang the bell at the top. When she sets her mind to something, it will be done, and it will be done with grace and style. But for me, that is not the only thing that I admire most about her. Wendy has a soft, comforting, strong, loving soul. In 2009, when my mom, who had dementia, fell, I didn't think I was going to do this, was transferred to Quaker Heights for rehab. Wendy was the CEO there. I was beside myself, not knowing how to support my mom. I'd never seen her incapacitated or weak, so agitated and so confused. Wendy walked by us and in her calm, reassuring voice simply said, "It will get better." Wendy was right. After the drugs from surgery dissipated from her, she became familiar with her surroundings and staff, my mom did calm down and acclimate. I will always be grateful for those supportive words and that encouraging moment. You couldn't ask for a better friend and colleague. I'm so grateful to know her, and I am very thankful that she's going to share her story with you. Thank you, Wendy Waters-Connell.
Arla, that's probably the best introduction I've ever had. Thank you. And thank you.
Sorry. But
Will
you're
do my
welcome.
best. I'm going to keep my composure now and try and I'm going to go ahead and share my screen now to go ahead and get started with the presentation. And I want to begin by saying to you how grateful I am to have been asked to be a part of Think Regional. I was so disappointed last year when we had to remote ourselves because of the pandemic. And I would, in full transparency, say to you right off the bat, it has been difficult for me to do Zoom presentations. I love public speaking, but I feed off the energy in the room. And that is the one thing I cannot see is all of your beautiful faces. So I acknowledge that at the beginning. I want to start with a land acknowledgement. This is something that YWCA USA is doing everywhere, every time there is a public address by one of their employees. And that is we stand on the land of the Hopewell, the Adena, the Miami, and the Shawnee in Southwest Ohio. And it is their shoulders that enables us to be here now. So we begin with that recognition. The second item on my agenda is to make sure that everyone in the room today understands that I am not a tribal member. I am a descendant. I don't represent any one tribe, although my descendancy is from the Cree of the Saskatchewan area in Canada. What I do want everyone to understand is that my message is that we're still here. Native Americans are still here. Many of their descendants inhabit every corner of our United States. And we just want to make sure that that is known. You would be surprised how many folks don't have an appreciation for descendants are still here in Ohio, even though we do not have a reservation of any given tribe. There are over 500 federally recognized tribes with their independent governance and over 600 languages and dialects. So no one descendant or Native American can represent all cultures. Again, I am grateful to be here and to tell my story for you about my own journey in identity and acceptance. This story begins with an understanding that it is rooted in quilts that have come into my life over the course of my life that help me understand what it means to be connected to each other. So on the far left of your screen, you see a Quaker maple leaf traditional quilt. In the center, you see a traditional Lakota star quilt. And on the far right, you see a quilt from Bangladesh. These quilts will help me tell my story this morning. I'm going to try and pull this down just a little bit because I think you may be able to see all of this up here. So let me bring this down a little bit. In this image is Don Waters. Don Waters is my grandfather and his wife Rosamond in the far right picture. The son between them is my father, Milton Hollis Waters. And these images were taken around 1945. This man was a mystery to us. He passed away when I was just 4 years old, so I have very few memories of him as a human being. But what I do know is that my dad said that we had American Indian in our blood and that it was through Don Waters. What we've been able to discover over time, and I share this openly and right at the beginning, is that his name was not Don Waters. So this was a man with a very complex past. And we were able to finally discover his name was Yaniyan. So there is a gap of information about how do we have Native American heritage and yet also have this man's European heritage. My parents were married on November 7th, 1964. And they're a beautiful couple with hopes and dreams. They soon gave birth to me. And so this is my newborn picture on the far left, a toddler picture in the middle, and then probably a first or second grade picture on the right. You can imagine the ritual at the beginning of each elementary school year, which is state your name and address, The minute I said Wendy Waters looking that way, my peers, the kids in the class would say, "Are you an Indian?" So what I know my parents taught me as I got older was it's not material. You just kind of assimilate and move on. But they named me Wendy Waters. So I'll let you think about that for a while. That was my job, informally, to assimilate and to blend in, to survive and keep my head down. And that's exactly what I did all through school, up until high school, at which time I had a local teacher. Her name was Stephanie Derbyshire, who taught at New Miami, who said, "What would you like to do after you graduate?" And I said to her, "I don't have any money. I'm not that smart. I don't think it's going to be possible for me to go to college." And she said, "Yes, it is. I want you to work really, really hard and we will find you a scholarship." Stephanie Derbyshire did just that. She found me a nearly full ride scholarship through Fort Hamilton Hospital, which put me through Miami's 2+2 program, which, yes, is dating me, attendees, because Miami's nursing program used to be an associate degree first, and then you went on to get your bachelor's degree. I started my work at Fort Hamilton Hospital in the intensive care unit. And to Arla's introduction, I guess it's no shock to you that I'm kind of an adrenaline junkie. And so, of course, I would have started in the ICU. I met my husband our senior year at Miami. We married, and 7 years later, I gave birth to my oldest son, David, on the right. So my career was just moving along smoothly. I went on to get a master's degree in nursing. I became a licensed nursing home administrator after working for Fort Hamilton at their nursing home called Berkeley Square in Hamilton for several years. But I wanted to do more, and I wanted to have more influence. And so I started to look, excuse me for my cough, and I found a place of inclusion in Waynesville, Ohio, in Warren County, at the Quaker Heights Care Community in Waynesville. I was, 32 years of age at that point. They hired me and I was expecting my second child. What I found there was an amazing wraparound feeling from the people who were running this incredible institution, and a vision for the future to build more, to build assisted living, to build rehab. And that's what we did in the 18 years that I spent time at Quaker Heights. I learned early on that the message of the Quakers, the peaceful Quakers, is there is that of God in everyone. Therefore, we are all equal and divine. And they caused me to pause, especially with this image, which is one of the prints hanging in the nursing home at the Quaker Heights Care Community in Waynesville. And this is an image depicting William Penn in what is now Pennsylvania, meeting with the Native American tribes of the northeastern region. This is the only treaty undertaken without oaths, because Quakers do not take oaths, and has never been broken. They believed in paying a fair price for land, not taking the land by force. I began that job expecting Jackson, and that Quaker board, in the first 9 months that I was there, threaded another quilt in my life, which was this Quaker maple leaf quilt. And I remember the chair of the board saying, "So we all decided we would put our threads to this. This is part of our heritage, part of our culture. We love quilts. They tell a story. And we were just going to make you a baby quilt for Jackson. And then we realized he was going to grow pretty tall pretty quickly, looking at that big guy that you're married to. So then we decided to make it a twin size quilt. And then we realized we wanted you to be able to wrap up in it as well." So the quilt got bigger and bigger as they completed all of those threads. And the fabric and the design represent the Quaker Heights logo of a maple leaf and all of the values that embody the elder care that I was in charge of at that organization. You can see in the image, I did spend time wrapped up in that quilt with Jackson, rocking him to sleep. It's one of my most precious possessions materially. It caused me to pause, though, as they wrapped their arms around me, fully acknowledged my heritage, celebrated it. I had the question in the head, what is my responsibility to walk the talk of their values, of my heritage, and how can it contribute to both work and home life? I am holding Jackson in a papoose board. This was my chosen image of him at 10 months. So you can see that little boy got big pretty darn quick. The time at Quaker Heights brought a transition in our lives. In May 2007, we lost my younger brother, Milton, and he suffered immensely. We all did, with lots of complex trauma early in life. And then in the middle part of his life, he tortured himself and abused himself with alcohol. And Milt passed away on May 20th, 2007, unexpectedly, though not surprisingly, if that makes any sense to any of you who have family members who have suffered from addiction and mental illness. It was an incredibly difficult time, but it was made easy by these people. This is the team that I worked with at Quaker Heights. And I remember that it was probably a full 2 weeks that it took Milt in an ICU to actually pass away from the complications of his organs failing. And they said, go away, take care of what you need to take care of. We will take care of this nursing home. So they carried me. They carried me during a time of great need. They were there during the memorial service. And as time went on and I returned to work and we just dug into the regular routine of the day-to-day, I realized I wanted to do something really special for this team. And so my two sons and I went out hunting for really pretty and unique rocks. We brought them home, we polished them. My sons helped me paint them with images that I felt reflected each of the spirits and the character of those team members. We made medicine bags for them, decorated them, and I prepared to give each one of these individuals a medicine bag at Christmas time in recognition of everything that they had done for me. Unbeknownst to me, they had ordered a prayer fan. So as we're exchanging gifts at Christmas time, which corporate teams do, we were more of a family. They once again acknowledged Milt, his loss, the tragedy in my life, but ironically, we were sharing gifts of heritage. And so I realized this is part of my life's journey. At that moment, the three of us remaining siblings who were alive decided we were going to openly and actively acknowledge our heritage. We began to grow our hair long in honor of Milt. I had always worn my hair in normal fashions after I cut it off by 5th grade, wanting to assimilate. But once he passed away, we made a different decision. And this is in part because of the amazing acceptance and love I felt from that Quaker community. We actively sought out ways to help our children understand their heritage. On the left is David as a traditional Southern dancer and Jackson as a traditional Northern dancer. Both of these boys are able to drum on a powwow drum, sing intertribal songs, and complete their traditional dances and styles. We do attend powwows in Ohio. They're all intertribal. They're not sponsored by any one given tribe. And they're proud of who they are. And I'm proud of who they are. Quakers gave me the courage to accept who I was on the inside and to share it actively on the outside. This is David drumming over here. You can see Jackson's feathers and his porky roach over here. And then I'm singing over here in the corner behind the drum. What I want to share with you that is unique about this situation, for those of you who know the Religious Society of Friends, also known as Quakers, is that they are conscientious objectors. They are peaceful because they believe killing another human being is killing that of God. And yet I am a descendant of Native Americans who revere their warriors and their elders. And so this was a point of contention. How do you celebrate those who have been at war when I'm working in a place that values and holds in the center peace? It was a delicate balance. Native Americans are the highest per capita minority group serving in the US Armed Military Service every single year, because it is culture to be a warrior. And so many sons and daughters choose enlistment in the US Armed Forces. At a powwow, the first thing we do is honor the elders and bring in the warriors first. Veterans are revered and celebrated at the beginning of that social event for the recognition of their sacrifice, their courage, and their bravery. This is a picture of my sister, Angie, singing a veteran song. So not surprisingly, Angie's oldest son, Weston, chose to join the Army after 9/11. We danced and we prayed during his multiple extended tours of duty. Here at the bottom of the picture is Jackson, who has grown a little taller, and his cousin Cameron, Weston's little brother, who's a little camera shy. We know that the first casualty of war is innocence, and that is what we expected when he came back. He did come back. He was not injured on the outside, but he was not the same on the inside. Weston, in his first holiday, Christmas in Iraq, said, "Here's what I want you to send me for Christmas. Send me shoes. Send me tennis shoes. Get the church involved. Send me as many pairs as you can." Because what was happening where he was, as he played soccer with the kids, is that these kids didn't have enough shoes. They would share tennis shoes, trading off and on for soccer games. So that's what he wanted for Christmas, was tennis shoes. Because in those children, he saw his younger brother and sister. As I've said, this is an image of the warriors coming into Powwow Circle, carrying all of the flags of the US military. But always the most revered is the POW and MIA. This is the tension I speak of. So these are images of me dancing, singing, praying for his healing and for the healing of all veterans who come home from war. Time marched on, the boys grew, and then we had rites of passage. David became 15 years of age, and what he chose at church for his rite of passage was leading an intertribal song. And it was just a beautiful thing because he had that man voice starting to emerge in his body. And it was just glorious to see him confident enough to be the lead singer on a powwow drum. Jackson comes of age, and we had developed a friendship with an Oglala Sioux, Lakota, Woody Richards, and we ended up doing a giveaway at Sunwatch Village in Dayton with Guy Jones during their annual powwow. And so this is an image of Jackson, that little bitty baby you saw me holding in that quilt, who's every bit of 6'3", and his brother David over here, who's every bit of 6'2", and they fight over that all the time. And their papa behind them at 6'4", who says, "You'll never grow taller than I am." It was a beautiful experience of culture. Jackson is given a Lakota star quilt for his coming of age and coming into the circle ceremony. It's a symbol of immortality and honor. The Lakota tell an origin story of the people came from the stars. And that is why the star quilt is so important to them as a symbol, and why this is another treasured quilt in our lives. So during early motherhood, I had a maple leaf quilt from the Quakers, and during the coming of age ceremony, Jackson got a Lakota star quilt. The wide creative designs that you see in all of these quilts, the maple leaf, the star, they explain heritage, they explain legacies. I expected to retire from Quaker Heights. My plan was to retire at 55 years of age. But something happened in 2017, and that was the CEO position at the YWCA in Hamilton, serving all of Butler County, was open. My dream was to retire and volunteer at the intersection of gender and race. And Chris had had lunch with the interim executive director during their search, and she shared with him that they were looking for a CEO. So hubby came home with that job description, and he said, I want you to open your mind, and I want you to just listen to the possibility. You have spent more than 18 years in Waynesville, serving the Quakers, serving elders, serving Warren County, and your home is Hamilton, Ohio. And we need you now more than ever. So I want you to think about applying for this job. Now, all of you can imagine a partner giving you that kind of plea makes it really hard not to consider that. I read the job description, understood the mission of the YWCA to be dedicated to eliminating racism, empowering women, promoting peace, justice, freedom, and dignity for all. And I was in tears because I knew that I was going to apply for this position, and I knew that I would probably get it because of the passion that I have for this work. So I left Quaker Heights in a deep state of grief, only to turn to YWCA Hamilton and to work to resurge the mission of this incredible institution in our hometown. As I was leaving Quaker Heights, a third quilt entered my life. And that is this gift that came to me as a parting gift. It is a quilt made by women in India who have survived human trafficking. They make these quilts, sell them at fair trade to help them have a life without enslavement, extortion, and early deaths. So this is a quilt I keep in my office to remind me what it is that I'm supposed to be doing in this job. Our job at YWCA is to ask the question, how can we help women and girls thrive? The image that you see on your screen is a photograph taken by artist Audra Shields in 2018 that says women's survival is written on their face. And she asked the survivors of horrendous trauma to write out their stories, and she superimposed it over their faces. And she shared it in an exhibit as a social justice message about we must stop violence against women and girls. You may recognize this image. So this is why I'm so driven for this work. It is the complete intersectionality of who I am and my lived experience. We know today's strong girls are tomorrow's women of influence. I know that quilts can be messengers of comfort and connection in who we are, our heritage, our culture. And I wanted to understand, can I use this as a medium for good? So baby blanket, coming of age, work transition. This is what I know about quilts as I come to the end of my talk. Compassion at YWCA is about offering housing for women who have experienced chronic homelessness, horrendous trauma loads like human trafficking, childhood abuse. They suffer from severe mental illness sometimes and addictions. And that is what we do, wrap them in a warm quilt so that they can have a life of dignity with affordable housing and services they need to cope with those horrific memories. But strength is knowing when it's time to wrap yourself in a quilt. We feel a space of belonging for any of us who has a quilt or has been in a quilt or looked at beautiful quilts. They send messages of cultural origins. This is the last quilt in my life so far, and it is a dancing quilt. I am a women's traditional dancer, Northern style, and so the cape that you see was actually quilted. and it is a representation of my name and my love and life. It is a river of waters that is flowing off my shoulders. There are rocks and pebbles and flowers. There are bubbles and waves, ripples and rocks, because that is what life is about. It is never smooth. There are always challenges. But every step of my dance in this women's traditional regalia is about praying for peace for all of us. And especially today, in the past year that we've experienced with all of the racial reckoning that we're facing, this quilt matters most at this moment in time. There is beauty in difference. The word diversity simply means different. We are all like the contrasting fabrics in a quilt. We are all like the quilts that are as different as the cultures that create them. But it is a symbol of how we are connected to each other. The threads of our humanity hold our fabric together. And my message to you in setting the tone this morning is to remember that we are all connected to each other by these threads. And if we choose to acknowledge that humanity that weaves us together, how can we not start to heal the divides that have caused so much unspeakable pain? I thank you for this time to tell my story, for your respect in listening. I thank my elders for giving me the space, and I'm happy to take any questions that you may have.
Okay, if anybody has any questions, please raise your hand.
Bob, I'll just start by just saying, first of all, Wendy, thank you very much for sharing your story. Wendy and I met, I guess, over 20 years ago. And one of the things that I saw in meeting Wendy the first time, how giving she was, how compassionate she was, good listener. And one of the things that when you know somebody for as long as Wendy and I have known each other, what you look for is somebody who is consistent. And what I heard you say today, Wendy, obviously gives more breadth and depth to who you are, but there's a consistency here. And probably one of the greatest compliments I could give you is thanks for leading by example. Okay, and we're very fortunate to not only have you back in Butler County and Hamilton, but basically for our entire region. We're a much better region to have Wendy Waters-Connell here, so thank you.
Okay, Tracy Carson has her hand raised. If you unmute yourself, Tracy, you can ask your question.
Sure. Wendy, thank you so much for the gift of powerfully telling your story this morning. I am so inspired listening to you. One of the things that you talked about that I think particularly impacts folks sometimes in Southwest Ohio and in the region was the pull of assimilation and feeling that need to hide your identity. And I was thinking, as you had a culminating moment, that helped you with your dear brother's loss, but how you as a parent helped your own children. I'd love to hear just your reflections on how you helped empower them to take such pride in their heritage and to know that, and to know that it's such an important part of them.
A great question, Tracy. I hope it's by example. I hope that by watching their mother take risks and share these kinds of stories publicly and be a part of those public presentations, that they gain an appreciation and understand how you can celebrate who you are. That has not been without challenge for them. Sometimes they have experienced a tremendous amount of peer pressure and sometimes cultural pressure to assimilate. Jackson, at 6 years of age, wanted to grow his hair long as well. And in the public school system, the dress code was that young men have to have their hair above their collar. And so we had to do a lot of work around educating this cultural desire to honor an uncle who had walked on and part of his own heritage. And one way that we were able to work around that was we did cultural demonstrations in the public school system, in his elementary school, so that his peers could understand why he was choosing to grow his hair long and to give them a chance to ask questions. That is how you empower your children to embrace their heritage.
Shelley, you have a question for Wendy?
Well, I'm speechless just listening to you, Wendy. Such a poignant and powerful message for sure. I did want to make a couple comments. And I saw someone that I know in one of your photos, Mark Banks. Mark and Ann Banks. I worked with Ann at the Middletown Chamber of Commerce. So I just wanted to make that note, but I also wanted, excuse me, to ask you if you'd tell us a little bit about future plans. I know you have big plans for the YWCA in Hamilton. Tell us about that.
Thank you, Shelley. I hear a little bit of an echo on my end, so I'll apologize if it's echoing for all of you. The YWCA in Hamilton was struggling with survival when I arrived, and yet there is a resurgence of need around this mission. And so we went to work really hard, really fast. And in the last 3 years, we found at least 20 more sources of grant funding for our ongoing mission to support the only domestic violence shelter in Butler County. We're also taking survivors of human trafficking, and we have 31 units of permanent supportive housing for women. We have a youth program in the school, and of course we do racial justice work around infant mortality, around awareness. Yesterday we had a Stand Against Racism event where we talked about the great divide and the healthcare gap and disparity in death rates in communities of color. Many of the Native American reservations out west have been decimated by COVID, and they're losing their treasured elders, the holders of the culture. There is a risk that entire languages could be lost with this amount of loss of elders. When I got to YWCA and realized the depth of need, I kept saying I need a bigger boat in many places. And I must have said it enough that somebody listened and put me in connection with somebody else and somebody else and somebody else. And so we were able to apply for a massive grant. The YWCA is now going to build a brand new campus. It will be located still in the county seat of Hamilton in Butler County, but we'll be able to expand the number of permanent supportive housing units that we have. We're going to double the size of our domestic violence shelter because we've had a doubling and tripling of need for emergency shelter. We've had an increase in severity of injuries, especially strangulation, and the kids who come with their mother are just highly traumatized. So we need a longer term stay with private apartments for them. It is a nearly $13 million development. We closed on those funds Wednesday, and we will start site work Monday. So there's a lot of exciting things going on at YWCA Hamilton. Thank you for asking, Shelley.
Wonderful.
I don't see any other hands raised, so I'll just share a comment, Wendy, that came up while you were speaking. In my other project that I'm working on, I spent a lot of time reading the Declaration of Independence and studying the words in there. And I think almost everybody thinks of that as exactly what the title is, a declaration of our independence, and how recently there seems to be more of a focus on the individual rights that are enshrined in that document versus the aspects of interdependence that are inscribed in that document. And I've really come to view it more as a declaration of interdependence than of independence. And if you read the last sentence in the Declaration of Independence, which most people don't know, probably don't get that far in reading the document. It underscores the fact that right before our founding fathers signed that document, they made the statement that that they trusted divine providence in protecting the country and their goal, but that they pledged to each other their lives, their fortunes, and their sacred honor. And then they signed it. And it's amazing to me how far we've come from living that sense of interdependence that they felt. But if they hadn't made that pledge and lived that pledge, we probably wouldn't have a country. So I think that the inclusion part of diversity, equity, and inclusion really goes all the way back to the time before we were a country. And although we open every session of the Senate and the House with the Pledge of Allegiance, I wonder really how many people think that we are living that pledge today in many ways, and that the importance of being one nation, indivisible, is really still our work today.
Thank you, Bob, for that comment. And thank you to all of you with your comments in the chat. I'm so honored. Thank you.
Joe, I guess it's over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Bob. And let's hear it once again. I know we're virtual for Wendy, huh? Great job. Great job, great job, great job, Wendy. Shelley, we are about 15 minutes ahead of schedule here. Did you want to take a break or you want us to keep going?
If you would like to take maybe a 5-minute stretch, that would be fine. And then we can start with our panel discussion.
Okay. Okay, 5 minutes. We'll see you back here. Thank you. And again, Wendy, thank you.
Thank you. And I'm going to stay and participate now.
Great, great.
Great.
Thank you.
Very good. I think that we have had a 5-minute stretch. I hope everybody is feeling refreshed, energized. Joe, would you like to say any words?
This is exciting. It's gone extremely well, and we're really excited about getting off to a great start. I think it shows you how much we missed last year, but we haven't missed a beat today. How's that?
Very good, very good.
Yeah.
Well, hopefully we'll call everyone back together again and we'll get started. It is my honor to introduce the guests that we have invited for our panelists today.
Yeah, absolutely. And if I could, just to kind of introduce this, our, I guess, panelists are going to share their perspectives on how diversity, equity, and inclusion impact an organization. So Shelley, you have the honors to do so.
Thanks so much, Joe. As people come back from their stretches, please feel free to unmute your video. We'd love seeing your faces. At this time, I'd like to introduce to you actually 3 friends of mine, in addition to being very important community leaders. They are very special friends to me that I have met through a variety of different organizations. And I will ask each one of them to perhaps take time to share their journey from whence they began their journeying to where they are today and involved with their current organization or organizations. I would like to introduce to you Emiko Moore, who is involved with community conversations and the bridging stories that she will talk to us of, as well as serving with events in Lebanon that the Martin Luther King Alliance is working on. And then following Emiko's presentation, Doug Bolton, who is the CEO of Cincinnati Cares, will share with us this very innovative organization that is just growing by leaps and bounds outside of southwestern Ohio. But I will leave that story to Doug Bolton. And then Noha Eyada. And Noha is very involved in Mason, Ohio, in the Mason City Schools, in diversity, equity, inclusion, and justice when it comes to events that the Diversity Council sponsors in the Mason City Schools, as well as the community events as well. So at this time, let me introduce Emiko. And Emiko, please, the stage is yours. And
Can you hear me now? Okay.
There we can hear you now.
Okay, great. Thank you very much for allowing me to come here and speak today. As Shelley said, my name is Emiko Moore, and I'm Asian American. My mother was Japanese and my father was American, and I grew up here in Lebanon. And at times I struggled with being different from everybody else as a minority. Throughout my school experience prior to college, I was the only Asian American student. Because I was different, there were times that I was made to feel embarrassed of my background instead of proud of my heritage. But as I grew older, I was able to appreciate the incredible strength and unique gifts of my two cultures, and it has been an asset in my personal and professional life. These experiences are part of what has led me to become involved with two diversity programs. I'm currently a facilitator for the community stories with the MLK Community Coalition of Lebanon, and a panel member with Community Conversations Bridging Stories based out of Mason. Those are mouthfuls to say all of those. I also became involved in this work because after I moved back to this area, after living in Tokyo, Boston, and New York City, I was surprised at what was happening in our area. A few incidents which highlighted a lack of understanding concerning race in our area became national news a few times within a 2-week period. And it was alarming to me. It showed me how much more work that we still need to do to understand each other and get to know each other. I think what I saw and felt was, wow, the disconnect. Like, wow, we really don't know each other. We live in this country, but we have this gap. So when I was invited to speak at the MLK Day service, I was asked to speak there in Lebanon at that very same time. I mentioned to the coalition the need for the community to have some dialogues because I felt there was a lot of misinformation and misunderstandings. And so that's how it got started. We created a group that put together Community Stories event. And one aspect of this Community Stories event is I often have heard people say that, oh, we don't have any racial problems in this area, or this was all part of the past. It doesn't happen here anymore. And I wanted to really make sure that we address that. So we did have stories made into poster boards of community members who often aren't asked to share their stories, but they were able to tell their experience, and there are ones that are current and some from the past. We wanted to shed light on things, and these are put up around the room so that people can quietly read them by themselves. The Community Stories is really a chance to have community members. It's a one-day event. We for a couple hours, we just have participants from the community come together, and we just have some icebreaker conversations in small groups. It's a chance for people to get to know one another. It's not about trying to change anyone's mind or change someone's opinions. It's really very basic. It's just getting to know someone who is different or might have different life experiences. And we challenge people to get to know someone different. A lot of times we'll have some people who come who've never actually talked to someone of a different race or a different religion. And when you put people in groups, it's very difficult to understand who they are. Whereas if you meet an individual and hear their story, you really start to see the humanity in people. So that's what we really wanted to do. And we've had some great discussions and people have gotten to get to know each other through these events. During COVID, we did have to stop this because this was in group meetings, but we hopefully will be getting that started up again soon. The other program that I'm involved in was started this past fall by Hakeem Oliver, who's a teacher and coach at Mason High School, and he also leads the diversity club there. He contacted me about wanting to put together a diverse panel, and to go and talk at different areas or different cities and share stories. It's similar. This is a 4-week program, and one night each week. And the first week, we have a panel discussion. There's 5 members of us on a panel. I speak about being Asian American growing up here in Lebanon. We also have the other 5 panel members include what Hakeem says is a hippie, a Jewish American, a former Bengal safety, and the daughter of a Klansman. And they all have amazing stories to tell. So far, we have been invited 3 times back. The city of Mason has had us 3 times. We are in our second session in Milford right now. And we've been in Loveland, and the city of Lebanon has invited us in May. So we will be doing 4 weeks in May on Thursday nights. So I hope if people are interested, they can join. The first week, the panel, as I said, we tell our stories. The second week, we invite the community to come and share their stories, and we get a chance to listen and acknowledge their stories. And it's one that I always look forward to hear what other people are seeing and experiencing in their own communities. The third week, we have small group discussions. And then the fourth week is we all get to basically break bread together. We meet at a restaurant and get a chance to share a meal together. And hopefully by the fourth week, which has happened each time, we have built some relationships with each other, and we can have, maybe we can delve into some more difficult conversations while we're sharing a meal, so that we can get a little deeper in asking questions or sharing things. These are the two things that I'm involved in. I do believe that we do live in a society today with a 24-hour news cycle that can influence us greatly. We also have so many social media platforms that can often be echo chambers for just one particular position. We also have a lot of editorial programs that push particular agendas and often get confused with impartial news. I often hear people quote things, and I want to say that's great, but just know that that is someone's opinion. False news spreads rapidly. I believe it's 6 to 7 times faster on social media. So I just really want people to get to know the people or the story, more about the stories they're hearing, and do more critical thinking. We're often fed a lot of this information, and I think that having time to actually have civil discourse and listen to people is becoming a lost art. I think we need to listen to different opinions. Many times people don't want to talk with anyone who has a different opinion, but I believe sometimes if we do, we might find that we have a lot more common ground than we realize. We also need to work on and building relationships with those that don't have the same views. I think that really listening to understand someone is powerful. Empathy is powerful. Understanding is powerful. It doesn't mean you have to agree, but if you take the time to listen, you might just hear another perspective. And I think that's what both of these diversity groups I'm working with are trying to do, is just shed light on a different perspective, and you might understand a little bit more. And having someone understand us a little more can be incredibly healing on both sides. So I just wanted to share about those two groups. If you want more information on the MLK Lebanon, you can just Google MLK Community Coalition of Lebanon. They have all the social media platforms as well as their website, and some of their events that they have coming up. They just had an Earth Day event, but they certainly have MLK community service in January, and then they'll have an MLK walk in August. And if you're interested in learning more about the Bridging Stories community conversations, you can contact Hakeem Oliver. It's still a small organization, but we are certainly going to different cities. So it's not one that's just happening in Mason. It's one that we take basically on the road. You can find out more about that by emailing Hakeem. His email is Hakeem, HAKIMOLIVER @ymail.com. And also, I just wanted to share that in Lebanon, we will be doing this event. And I believe, Shelley, I don't know if you have that graphic of the flyer that.
Do you have the flyer, Tom?
That we may or may not have, or maybe we can show that later, that gives the information of where the event will take place in Lebanon. So I just wanted to say thank you for listening, and appreciate the time.
Emiko, do you happen to have the flyer? I think Tom and Bob thought you were going to share the flyer. Do you happen to have it?
No, I only have a PDF of it that I sent to
Tom
Bob,
and Bob.
to share, but I can see if I can get it, put it in the link.
Or if you send it again, send it again, and we'll show it later.
Emiko, is it on your desktop?
It's not on my desktop right now. Let me. So
if you just put it on your desktop and then click on share screen, you'll be able to click on it. It'll show you your desktop, and then you can bring it up. You can click on it, and then we'll all be able to see it.
Okay, I'll add that. And I think I saw some questions about when this event. It's every Thursday in May. Let's see if I have
And Emiko, while you're looking for that, if you forward that to me, I have everyone's email addresses that are on here. We can send it out as an attachment as an email.
Great, I can, oh, I think someone just put the link on it.
Yep.
Thank you, Laura.
Well, I have to say, the Ohio State University Extension Office, and Laura is involved with that as well, Laura Stanton. They're doing a book club and discussion. And you might want to put that up on in the chat as well, Laura and Steve Brady, because I've popped in on that book club, and it's very, it's opened up many conversations. And you talk about those conversations. Sometimes they're challenging ones that people do not necessarily totally embrace immediately, but they're so powerful. Don't you find that, Emiko?
I do, and I think that's one of the things with the MLK Community Coalition. We do make sure to let people know that, you might feel uncomfortable with the topics. The topics that we talk about there are really icebreaker conversations. I mean, they're really things, the first conversation, the first question in small groups is, what was it like growing up in what were your family meals like in your home? And everyone has a different story to share about. These are ones that we do, but sometimes in sharing, yes, it can become uncomfortable when we ask people to try to be with their uncomfortableness, but we also offer an opportunity for people, if they do need to talk with someone professionally. We do have some people that they can talk to as well if it brings up things that they need to talk further about.
Does anyone else have comments or questions for Emiko? I was going to say, while people are still thinking, would you like to mention your project in Japan and with the park in Lebanon?
Oh, sure. Thank you. My family is from my mother's family is from northern Japan, the city of Ishinomaki, and that was one of the most devastated cities in the 2011 earthquake and tsunami in Japan. I mean, that really washed away a lot of the northeastern region of Japan. It actually moved, the earthquake was so powerful, it moved the country over several inches. One of the things that our family wanted to do was to help rebuild a public playground, because we felt that when you have a community that is destroyed, children are often left playing in the rubble. And that's not really how childhood is a very quick time. Me at the time was 7, and we knew that children grow up really fast, and play is such an important, vital part of a child's life. So we worked together with the Consulate General of Japan in Detroit, and together with the University of Cincinnati, deans at DAP, UC DAP, they created a college course. We had 25 industrial design students that created designs, which we had the citizens, the community members in my mother's hometown pick the design they wanted. And then we did a lot of fundraising and were able to build the playground in 2014 in Ishinomaki. And as of now, every year they have flower plantings, and you see more and more of the community repair and rebuild the area. But also Miller Ecological Park here in Lebanon contacted me and asked about building a friendship park relationship with the park in Japan. So right now we have this friendship park relationship here in Lebanon with the park and with the park in, it's called Matsunami Park in Japan. And hopefully, once we can get things started, we do have a small little friendship garden, but there are plans that to have a friendship garden or a Japanese style garden in Miller Park as well. So that's another project that's in the works.
It looks like Bob Viney has his hand up.
Emiko, I just wanted everybody to know that in Alt Park in Cincinnati, there's a wonderful cherry blossom grove, cherry tree grove, that was built by the Japan American Society here in Southwest Ohio. And having been fortunate enough to live and work in Japan for 2.5 years, travel around the country and celebrate cherry blossom festival with the Japanese in Japan, that it's always one of the things I have looked forward to in the spring is to go visit that park in Alt Park and walk through the cherry blossoms. It brings back great memories, but it's also one of the most beautiful places in Cincinnati in the spring when all the cherry blossoms are in full bloom. So if people didn't know about that, I think it's unfortunately past peak cherry blossom time probably, and the snow this week hasn't helped that much. But next year, put it on your calendars, and when spring comes, take an afternoon and spend a little bit of time in Alt Park at the Japan American Society Cherry Blossom Grove.
I love that place. I think it's beautiful. I've taken my daughter there. We've had a picnic there and sat around the cherry blossom. It's stunning. It's very stunning. This year, the cherry blossoms came very early, so we had just missed it when, so next year. But I agree. Everyone should go see. It's beautiful.
Well, thank you so much for all that you do, Emiko. And your story is so inspiring. I appreciate you spending time with us and hope you can spend the rest of the morning with us as well. Now, next, let me reintroduce it once again, Doug Bolton, who is the CEO of Cincinnati Cares. And Doug, the stage is now yours.
Thank you, Shelley. I appreciate that. It's so great to be part of this conversation. And Wendy and Emiko, you're very hard to follow. And in particular, I mean, I really would hope that this would be a conversation as opposed to me speaking. And so, Wendy, if you're still there and could maybe even help me get started in what I'm going to be talking about, that would be fabulous. So anyway, if you are there, unmute yourself and kind of pop up, because I have a question that I wasn't able to ask you that I would love to be able to ask you and get us started.
Okay, happy to help, Doug.
Awesome, excellent, very good. So first, you know, what I'm really here to talk about is our work creating wider nonprofit boards, as you can see on my screen. And some of you may be thinking, you know, what's this old white guy know about creating wider nonprofit boards? Well, first of all, what does wider nonprofit boards mean? It's about creating welcoming, inclusive, diverse, equitable, and representative nonprofit boards. And I guess first, what I'd like to do is for those of you who don't know me, I'd just like to step back a second. I spent 30 years in the media business in Cincinnati, reporter, editor, publisher, started my career at the Middletown Journal, ended my career in the media business as publisher of the Business Courier. And during that time, when you are the publisher of the Business Journal in a metropolitan region, every nonprofit wants you to become part of their board because you happen to have a large network of business people in the greater Cincinnati region. So as a result of that work, I got to know the nonprofit space really, really well. I really got tired of the media business because, as you all know, the media business changed a lot when the internet came and disrupted the print business and the print media business. And I got this opportunity, this phenomenal opportunity to go run a big commercial real estate services firm. Fortunately, that firm thought a lot about its communities. And so it allowed me to continue my community work even as I made that transition. So almost 10 years in the commercial real estate business, again, working deeply into the nonprofit space, was able to continue my work. And then as we sold the real estate business and I did not want to work for a out-of-town private equity owner for the rest of my career, I started to think about a third act and really began to think about the nonprofit space and how I could have an impact in the community, greater Cincinnati region that I loved. I grew up in Butler County, in Trenton, went to Edgewood High School. And so this region is I've never lived anywhere else except for going to school in Kentucky, living in northern Kentucky. Now live actually in Greene County. So know the kind of the region really well, and I love this this mega region. Of Dayton to Cincinnati to northern Kentucky. It's one of the best places to live, work, and play. So this is where I want to spend the rest of my career working to improve this community that I know all of you love as well. So after I left the commercial real estate business, I got this fabulous opportunity with a small nonprofit that had just started actually 4 years ago this week that began to work on a dirty little secret in greater Cincinnati, which was that our volunteer rates in this community were crashing, declining at twice the national rate. And when you looked at other regions across Pittsburgh, Cleveland, Columbus, Detroit, where volunteer rates were actually increasing. One of the reasons why was two big reasons. Number one was investment in the volunteer ecosystem. But the second thing was there was no single organization in greater Cincinnati, like other metropolitan regions, that was 100% focused on the volunteer and helping the volunteer find their way to help. And so that was the formation of the organization that I run. It's called Cincinnati Cares. I'm showing you the website. It's cincinnaticares.org. You can easily search for the causes that you care about. You can search by zip code, by where you live, where you work. You can essentially use Google. Google's taught us how to search, and use Google to find the things that you're passionate about. There are 700 nonprofits in this platform, have 1,700 ways across the region to essentially help the volunteer really connect with their way to help. And some of you probably think, well, I have no problem connecting with how I want to help. You are all leaders and well-connected leaders, but the vast majority of people don't have the connections that you have and the ability to connect with people the way that you do. And so that has led us to essentially serve all the rest of the community in helping them find their way to help. That work has led us to to really this mission, which is we reveal the ways that everyone in a community can make a difference. Our platform got some attention in other communities that actually did not have this kind of guide, and so now we have built the platform in other communities, and now are the largest builder of community guides like Cincinnati Cares. And so we're in 25 communities, 4 entire states. And really, that brings me back to what I really wanted to talk about today, which is All of this work gave us a really, really close view on every city in America is facing the challenge of creating nonprofit boards, nonprofit institutions that have welcoming, inclusive, diverse, equitable, and representative boards to make the decisions that are good for those organizations. And that has led us to create training programs, matching programs, more training programs to help communities and help nonprofits be able to, again, create that environment where really good decisions are being made to help their communities. So, I mean, you've heard the conversation around diversity. What is it? It's really about being different. There's so many dimensions of diversity. Emiko, Wendy have talked about a couple of them, but there are so many more that sometimes when you talk about diversity with people, their brains shut off. And it's because they think some bad things are about to happen to them. And when you think about the entire dimensions of diversity, you can bring them back in because you're talking to them about their place in society and how they can be impacted. And, you know, the demographics obviously is what we talk about a lot, you know, with respect to ethnicity, language, socioeconomic issues. But really, there's also cognitive diversity and the approach to issues. And, you know, Bob Blaney is a big believer in all of this in terms of, you know, education and military and constitutional issues. So there's so many ways to define diversity that really people need to think about that word differently and not be scared by it. And really, there's so many ways to elevate the discussion of diversity. We often get challenged about, you know, is this really something that's good for communities? And so the business case for diversity is over the top in terms of companies that engage diverse management teams. You know, the Quakers, fortunately, were enlightened so many years ago to empower this minority-looking young CEO to be their leader. Not every organization is willing to take that risk. And our communities suffer because of that. And so the statistics bear that out. And, you know, some people say, is this really a problem that needs to be solved? And these are statistics that absolutely, I hope everyone understands that our nonprofit sector, which in this community is 10% of our economy, in most communities, it's more than 10%. It's at either that 10% or more. That this is a really important space to be thinking about diversity. And right now we have some really, really poor numbers. When you look at most nonprofit boards and most nonprofit organizations, they do not have diversity in their CEOs or their board members, which leads to kind of the same echo chamber and other things like group thinking. I mean, it's a phenomenon that affects every organization, that if everybody around the table looks the same, comes from the same neighborhood, thinks the same way, then that organization is going to think the same way. And quite frankly, what is your role on a nonprofit board? You are a fiduciary to the public, and you should be questioning everything that an organization does. If you are a defender of the status quo, then you are not inventing the future, as our good friend Seth Gooden says. So I'm going to pause a second and bring Wendy in, as I said. Back to the issue of diversity and identifying people. Wendy, what would you recommend? Because I get asked all the time. I have no idea how to find Native Americans to serve on my board. Wendy, how do you answer that question, if you even get that question, but would love to hear what you think is a way for nonprofit boards to be able to engage with and find Native Americans who might be interested in serving in a nonprofit board role to help bring that voice and that ideology and that cultural thinking to their organization.
A great question, Doug, and I'll try to answer this quickly. The YWCA's mission is eliminating racism, so you would assume that that board is inherently diverse because they're representing women and girls, and especially women and girls of color. And yet in Butler County, we have only 9% in the city of Hamilton that really are African American, probably a little bit equal or just under that in the Hispanic community. It is not an easy task, but it is doable. I think the key to recruiting diverse members to your board is understanding that there are incredibly talented folks who can help connect you to others who might be willing to serve. But it has to begin with trust and relationships. So you have to move into those relationships by building connections, having lunches with people, understanding where they live, where they work, what the issues are, finding out who their informal leaders are and their formal leaders are, talking about your organization's needs and what it is you're trying to achieve in creating a more diverse board. And once that sense of authenticity is present, that it's not mere tokenism, I promise you it will not be hard at all to start recruiting diverse folks. And I speak to two experiences. One, if you're the only woman on a board in a boardroom, it feels like tokenism. If you're the only African American, the only descendant of Native Americans, the only AAPI in the room, it's going to be like, okay, check mark, this board met their quota. That is not what should be the intention. It's not about numbers. It's about what kind of philosophies and thoughts do you want represented in your board, leading your organization into the future?
That's a great point. Thank you, Wendy. I mean, that gets to what you were just talking about, the tokenism. I mean, there are barriers, quite frankly, that people have about why they don't want diverse boards. And, number one, it can be uncomfortable. It takes work and time. You're right. One Native American on your board is not enough. It needs to be more. And one woman on your board is not enough. So many, so much work and time has to go into that. And then again, the classic barrier is, well, we've always done it this way. We're successful. We continue to grow. We're meeting our mission. So why should we change? And quite frankly, that is, why our country is in the situation it is in, because it's never been forced to change, to think about things differently. So all kinds of barriers to diversity and passive resistance that all of our organizations and our communities have to get through in order to do that. And so, I think, probably Wendy, Emiko, on your organization's boards, I mean, every board member has to think about themselves as being a champion of diversity. It's not just the executive director's responsibility. It's just not the board chair's responsibility. It has to be a complete board commitment to the statement of diversity, equity, and inclusion, a nominating committee structure that focuses on recruitment, and then the board holding themselves accountable to do this kind of work. Changing governance, again, this is hard work. In terms of changing the way that your governance policies exist to be able to create this. I mean, I serve on a board who has board members who have been on the board for 17, 25, 35 years. And it is hard for me to have a conversation with those people to say, we have to think about term limits and putting term limits in place in order to create diversity on our board. And when you have someone who has been committed to an organization that long, has been a donor for that organization so long, those are hard conversations to have, but they must be taking place in our community. So I'd love in the chat people to say, what recruiting pitfalls have you seen in the past in the organizations that you're involved in? And Bob, I can't see the chat results, but if there's any that pop in there that you could just kind of talk to us about. And then does anybody have some great recruiting tools and strategies for well-balanced boards? Would love to hear some great success stories that exist. I know they are out there in the Warren County Butler County, greater Cincinnati region. So don't want to have people be shy about some great successes that they are having. Here are some phenomenal tools that we are seeing across the country in terms of, we're willing to share around, essentially making it intentional in terms of, cataloging who you have on your board, where they are special skills that they have, the resources that they bring to the table, the community connections that they have, to be able to create that matrix so that, like Wendy was saying, it's not tokenism, but you are looking for skills, and those skills exist in diverse audiences. One of the things that people oftentimes think about, well, I'm not a good fit for their board because I don't have exactly what their board exists, and that's exactly the fallacy of good fit. You may think of yourself as not being a good fit for Joe Hinson's board, but you may be exactly what Joe Hinson needs to bring the diversity and thought to that conversation. So there are so many tools out there, and Bob, again, please interrupt me if there's any great conversation in the chat, but there are so many tools available to people. Developing junior boards is a strategy that can help to make it easy for someone to diversify their board without a threat to their existing board. Is one thing. Education. We have such great colleges in our region, and there are MBA students who are looking to make an impact immediately in their career. Serving on a nonprofit board is one of those. Warren County runs one of the most successful leadership programs, and so obviously making it a requirement of a graduate of a leadership program to serve in the community on nonprofit boards should be it's a non-starter before you sign up to become part of a leadership program. That should be part of the sign-up process, that you are going to do that. There are executive search firms in this community that they work on a pro bono basis, but I've had several of them tell me, nonprofits don't reach out to me and ask me for help. I'd be happy to help. So think about engaging executive search firms in a way that would help you with your recruiting. So this is something that we've seen out there that really helps diffuse the idea that the only reason why someone wants me on their board is to write a check. And so we've seen some nonprofits put in these point systems that essentially give credit to their potential board members for the things that they really need. And that is, again, non-financial. So yes, you get credit for making a financial contribution, but there are other things. And essentially this allows someone who, look, if I don't have the resources to give, I can do other things and earn points as a board member. So this is a tool that has, we've seen across the country be implemented to help people create diverse boards when, the mindset is the only reason why I'd want a board member is because they would be a major donor. And then finally, and I'll wrap up, is the whole idea of welcoming. It is intimidating, quite frankly, for people to join a board and when they are different. And so boards have to do a lot better job at the idea of retaining their new diverse members, because I've seen it happen so many times where someone does a great job of connecting with someone who's different, but then they don't make them feel welcome. They don't do the things that they need to do, from facilitation tools to intervening in conversations where it feels like maybe the person who is different and is trying to express an opinion that is different gets shot down by either the majority or one person who is dominating. And then again, creating opportunities just like you would in a workforce or a family situation, just making sure that there's plenty of healthy conversation that really welcomes dissent and, again, intervening in those places. So one of the things that, want to make sure that you are all aware of is the board platform that helps create access for all. So we run this in Cincinnati and a number of other communities. In Cincinnati, it's at boards.cincinnaticares.org. It's free to the nonprofits, free to the volunteers to literally find your place. There's 700 people using it in Greater Cincinnati. There's 441 nonprofit board positions available today. So there's clearly a marketplace here. And in Boston had some great success, as well as in Cincinnati. And finally, we know that inertia takes over, quite frankly, in the board marketplace space. So we've created a series of events that were in person before the pandemic. Now they're virtual, and we can do these in a community. We do them in a greater Cincinnati region, but you could also do this in, specifically in Warren County to connect people that otherwise would not be able to connect to the nonprofits in Warren County. So anyway, I'll stop sharing and would love to take any questions or engage in any conversation. And Emiko and Wendy, you have such great experience in this area. Would love to have you lead off with any thoughts or comments.
Doug, your organization has clearly come at such a great time because, or the perfect time, I should say, because I know when Bob and I attended one of your meetings, and we came away with, and that was in the earliest of days when you were getting started. Where you are now is just amazing to see the growth that has taken place, like I said, here in Cincinnati as well as other cities. And I think half the battle is just people knowing about you, knowing that you're actually trying to bring people together with organizations that need them, and they don't even know that yet. So Emiko, Wendy, others in the group, comments, questions? Bob, I see your hand raised.
Yeah, Nikki Robinson has her hand raised. So Nikki, if unmute yourself and take the floor.
Yeah, Bob, thanks. I was just going to say, I think it's great work, Doug, that you guys are doing. I think I recently found out about your organization earlier this year, and I have no idea how, to be frank, but I do think there is a lot more people out in the community willing to help the nonprofits and serve even in the professional community. And the word just doesn't always get out, like Wendy said. So I think it's a really great idea and concept. And I just think that, the key is just continuing to get the word out and looking for those volunteers that are out there, because I do think they're there. I don't think they all understand really what the commitment can be. So being super clear, like you said, and communicating that, and really just, making the ask, because I do think, in the banking and the banks and other even professional organizations, individuals are out there that do want to serve, and they're just not able to connect. So less of, I guess, question, more of a comment, and just think it's great work you're doing.
Nikki, does U.S. Bank encourage managers, senior executives, employees to serve in the community, look for ways? Because
they do, yeah, for sure.
Your corporate culture, connecting those people with Doug's organizations might answer a whole lot of people's questions about, okay, but how?
Yeah, and I think that's the biggest thing. To be frank, we have bankers that want to serve, and it's not as easy as you would think connecting them with nonprofits across the region. So it's great to know that the resources are out there. I think the same people get asked a lot is what I think happens.
Yep.
So the more, maybe the more visible leaders in the communities are getting the ask and they're already overcommitted. And I do think there's others willing that are maybe more in that emerging leader space that actually have more to contribute than even they realize. And it would be, once again, great for the board to have different perspectives. Even when you think about diversity, age diversity, right, can be important. So those are the future leaders in our community sometimes that haven't had the opportunity yet, but are willing and can maybe make a bigger impact in the vision going forward with an organization. So I think it's great work. And I do think there are people out there that want to get involved and they just don't know how to connect. So,
Right. Doug, Kathleen Blake posted a comment that if Cincinnati Cares communicated with HR director organizations, that might help spread the word about vacancies and connection opportunities that they could share with employees. I don't know if that's part of your ongoing process.
It has been, obviously the pandemic put a hold on a lot of that work because HR directors needed to manage so many other more important things during the pandemic. But before the pandemic, we clearly were, talking with HR organizations, and again, the beauty of our organization is that we're solely focused on getting the workforce, the community engaged in nonprofits. It doesn't have anything to do with fundraising. It is about volunteering, and so we don't have the barriers that kind of fundraising organizations put up with respect to, okay, you can get involved as long as you donate, and so the statistics say that you need to be a volunteer of an organization before you feel strong enough about that organization to write a check. And so I think we are creating funding and more donors in our community, but someone has to start at the tip of the spear and get people engaged in the community where it matters to them. So yes, HR directors are a great source of where we start talking in a company.
David Lapp has his hand raised. So David, you're on.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. Doug, question for you. I'm wondering if you have any experience or insights into organizations that do a good job with class diversity on boards and in leadership. As you said, there's many different kinds of diversity, and class diversity is one that I think about a lot. So, examples are there organizations that that do a good job of building working class leadership, whether it's on the board or in the organization? Because so many times our boards it's just so easy, for those to just be dominated by college educated professionals. But working people also, have oftentimes important experience and insights around the issues that organizations are facing. So wondering if you have any experiences or insights, stories about organizations that do a good job with that.
Yeah, I mean, in particular, in Cincinnati, the Cincinnati AFL-CIO Labor Council is phenomenal. If you aren't connected to Pete McClendon and Brian Griffin and that team there, they represent a body of 30 different independent labor unions. All who have what you exactly were describing, working class people who are leaders in their labor union, who also care about the community. And so that would be one place that I would recommend. And that obviously brings in a great cross section of socioeconomic difference to organizations. I'm trying to think about any of the other organizations that we work with. That's the one that comes to mind immediately with respect to that question.
Very good. Well, I think we're time is fleeting, and we want to make sure that we have plenty of time for Noha. So Doug, impressive, inspiring. Keep up the good work, and please let us know what we can do to help you. Just a quick anecdote. I was one of potentially a token woman that was invited to belong to the Middletown Rotary when Rotaries were male only. And so I wouldn't feel like I was the token woman. They invited another woman to at the same time for that very reason, Pat Combs, who owned Combs Travel Agency, and I was with the Chamber of Commerce. And I actually ended up saying, I had spoken to the Rotary Club 3 different times as their luncheon speaker. And finally, I just said at the end of one of my presentations, I said, whenever you decide that you want to invite women to belong to this great organization, I'd love to be considered. So I don't know if I invited myself, but I was honored to be asked. And I was a very active member of Rotary. So that was a great time.
If I could speak just for a couple of minutes. A lot of organizations may not realize that diversity is a key value in terms of improving the results that they exist to deliver. I certainly learned that working in Japan and Taiwan for 7.5 years. But in doing the work I've been doing recently, you look around the world, there are a lot of other democracies in the world today. Although we were the first, we're not the only one anymore, thankfully. But we're the most diverse. You know, you think about the other countries, even in Europe or Asia, that are democratic, and they are nowhere near as diverse ethnically and racially as we are. And then you think about how that's impacted America. Where's the most of the innovations in the world come from in the last 100 years? Japan may be dominating, for example, the TV market. China may be dominating the computer market, but they didn't invent television or computers. And I believe that it's our diversity as a country that has led to the diversity of thinking in our country that leads to the innovation in our country. So Albert Einstein said a long time ago that insanity is doing the same thing over and over again in the same way, meaning thinking the same and expecting the results to improve. And the flip side of that is, if you as an organization want to achieve results you've never had, you have to be willing to do things you've never done. And developing a roadmap for what that change needs to be and looks like is accelerated by having a diverse group of people who think differently. And a different life experience is one of the key ways to ensure that you're getting people with different thinking.
Okay, very good. Well, we'll have some additional time for comments and questions at the end of our Braver Angels presentation. But before we get to Braver Angels, I definitely want you to meet Noha, Eyada. And Noha is, as I mentioned, very involved with Mason City Schools and the community of Mason overall. So at this time, Noha, please, the stage is now yours.
Thank you, Shelley, and thank you, Bob, and thanks for the Think Region for giving me the opportunity to speak today. Obviously, after listening to Wendy and Emiko, I think I'm very small compared to them, but let me just give you a little history, because this all goes into the diversity portion. I was born in Kuwait and grew up in England. My parents are originally Egyptian, and that's all I knew about it. My British school never differentiated between any of us. There were 120 nationalities in the school, and we were all treated equally with no differences. I'd say that it had its pros and cons. that they were colorblind and ethnicity blind. But then it struck me when I had to go back to Egypt for college, because that's when I saw the division in the community based on even the tone of your skin and your religion. And I was struck as how come being back in my country, this is the way I'm treated, because you look a little different, because you talk a little different. Anyways, long story short, fast forward, I met my husband and we came over to the US. And I thought this is the great opportunity because I'm in the land of diversity, the land of the free, and the home of the brave, which is the one sentence in the anthem every time I hear brings tears to my eyes. I have to admit, I lived a little bit inside my shell the first few years, between the family and the kids and work. And I just thought we blended in until my son, who's now 20, was in first grade back in upstate New York. And he came home crying because other kids were picking on him because of his name and his skin tone and his hair color, and that the fact he doesn't eat ham or any pork products. And he flipped from a kid who wanted to go to school every day to a kid who cries every morning, doesn't want to go to school. He felt very unfitting and very unwelcome. It was one of the reasons why we moved to Houston, where there was a more diverse community down there. But still, he still felt unfitting. Then we moved up to Cincinnati here, and I just had my twins and I was busily involved with them. But then an event took place back in 2012, which maybe everybody remembers. It was on the media, and it was the World Hijab Day and how it caused a lot of backlash back then. And that's when I told my husband that day, we're different. We don't fit in. We are looked upon differently. We might kind of from the outside look like we fit in. Yes, we're Muslims. I don't dress like a traditional Muslim, and we might fit in, but I do see it when I am out with my girlfriends, even in a restaurant ordering food, and how the server treats me differently than they treat my girlfriends who wear the traditional hijab. I said, we need to get more involved with the school because we need to build those bridges and fill those gaps. And that's when I learned about the Mason Diversity Council. We started getting involved in it. And the more we got involved, the more I learned from it. It was like an icebreaker, a conversation starter. It's a safe place for people to share their stories. It's a welcoming message to everybody to learn more about everybody. I keep telling my kids, you're not just one piece of colored plain fabric. Every piece of your fabric is a thread of a different color, and each of these colors is one identity and character of who you are. So be proud of your colorful fabric, because this is who you are. And going back a little more to history, a couple of years ago, we did our DNA testing. And as I said, I thought I was Egyptian. Apparently, doing our DNA, my descendants are the Moriscos in Granada, who were expelled by the Roman Catholic Church and King Philip III back in the 17th century. And they had to flee to Morocco and to the western fringes of the Ottoman Empire in Turkey. And we also did a trip 2 years ago and retraced their steps, which brings a lot of history into how, if you look at who we are, we all originated from the same part of the world, and we all have our stories to tell. I'm a storyteller. I love telling stories, and I love listening to people's stories because we learn. We learn from different backgrounds. We learn from different experiences, and we just get to know each other more. So I'll start by sharing my slides here. And the first slide here is actually one of my most favorite quotes about diversity. And it says, diversity is being invited to the party, but inclusion is being asked to dance. that resonates a lot with me because I always thought that, yeah, people take you in just to have you there sitting on the chair, but you are never welcome to even share who you are or what your experience is. They just want the outer picture to look beautiful. So the Mason City School DEI Council journey, as I said, I got involved with them early in the 2012, 2013. They originally were formed in 2004. It was made up by parents, staff, and community members. It is now the Superintendent Committee, which started back last year. And they sponsor a lot of events, educational, training, fun events each and every month. The vision of the council is to empower students, staff, and families to take anti-bias, anti-racist, equitable, and inclusive actions that ensure that every child belongs. Here's a timeline of when of the different stages of the council. As I said, they started in 2004, and going along in 2017, they started the acts of racial bias. And in 2018, the inclusive excellence was defined as one of the district's 3 big rocks, which I'm going to talk about shortly. Now, what does it mean when Mason says inclusive excellence? That they are committed to celebrating diversity, embracing equity and justice, and living out authentic inclusion. And why do they do that? They do it because, as everybody or many of you know, that Mason is a multicultural community. And we have to be responsible, or the district needs to be responsible to ensure that all our students are prepared to thrive in the global world. I know many kids, and including mine, who come from different backgrounds and traditions. They leave their identity at the door of the school when they walk in the morning. That should not happen. Kids should always feel comfortable to speak who they are and what they are, because they should not fear being in a place with their own identity. So it's important that our schools feel like a safe place where all learners are seen, valued, cared for, and respected at their full selves. And the school really supports this a lot. Now, the principles of the DEIJ are diversity, where it celebrates and honors the rich identities in our learning community. It's equity, where it educates, where educational experiences that ensures each one thrives, each learner thrives, every student thrives. Inclusion is when we intentionally build relationships and empathy so that every learner belongs. And justice is when we step up against bias and racism in our actions, policies, and practices. Again, this is a diagram which shows the changing community over the years. So as you can see, back in 2005, it was 85.5% white, 7.3 Asian, 3.5 Black, 2.1 Hispanic, and the rest was the different other ethnicities. Now in 2020, that dynamic has changed because our community has changed. So as I said, there are 3 big rocks for the Mason schools, and they are culture, inclusive excellence, and personalized learning. Now for inclusive excellence, the objective is to deepen the appreciation of diversity and the commitment to equity and inclusion. The second, well, is to step up against bias. And there are 4 parts of it. To interrupt by speaking up against every biased remark every time in the moment without any exceptions. To question is to ask simple questions in response to hateful remarks and to find out why that speaker made that offensive comment. You can just try saying, why do you say that? Or tell me more. How do you feel that way? To educate and to explain why a term or a phrase is offensive, and to encourage people to choose a different expression. You can't tell a person that, their hair looks different because they're African American, or they have an afro, or it's not as straight or as not the same color. To echo is when somebody speaks up against hate, and to reiterate their anti-bias message. Again, this is another diagram about stepping up against bias. You should not be silent. Always step up and speak. Don't be afraid. Then it's the reporting to ensure consistent response and care for the target and the witnesses. And recording ensures that we know what is occurring so that the school can actually analyze the trends and measure the progress and work upon it. Here are some responses of some of the kids at the Mason Middle School when they started following the steps to standing up against bias. And it's just mind-boggling what some of these kids came out with when they felt comfortable to speak their minds and to speak what they have in their heads. The DEI Council has done a lot over the years between community conversations with the superintendent and read conversations. Obviously, with the pandemic, many of these events have turned into virtual Zoom meetings, but still they thrive on these events to build that bridge and connection with the community. The third rock is to ensure that each learner feels emotionally and physically safe to be supported and empowered to pursue worthy challenges. The inclusive excellence deepens appreciation for diversity and commitment to equity, inclusion, and justice. Now, the Diversity Council has sponsored and held many events, including probably the most famous is the Taste of Mason, which takes place in February. Obviously, we had missed it this year because of the pandemic, but it's one of the most eventful and colorful events that takes place in Mason. And it's a beautiful rainbow of all the diverse backgrounds in our community. They have also sponsored speakers and authors with different books and different ideas to share those ideas and to discuss. Then we also had the Dialogue, which was one of my favorite events, where we share a meal and we have discussions. There was also the Lunar New Year celebration. There were several trainings, and I'll talk about the community iftar, my next slide, when I just talk about what brought it up to. So a subdivision is the Lunar Moms, and the Lunar Moms is a group of Mason moms that came together a couple of years ago to support the children. They're Muslim moms, and that's why they call Lunar Moms, to support the children to feel more supported and included in the Mason schools, to bridge the gap between the Muslim community and the Mason School District, to mobilize the Muslim community to engage and support the school district. So what they did was they provided a bridge between the community administrators for resources as Ramadan, which we are celebrating right now, as it enters and moves through the school year, because since it's a lunar month celebration, it's 11 days earlier every year. They have fundraised and donated 3 books for each classroom, grades kindergarten to 4th grade, and 3 sets of school building libraries. They have worked with the elementary music and art teachers to integrate culture and holidays into the curriculum, because I know around the holidays when my kids are learning all these songs, they always come up to me and say, "Hey mom, why isn't there a Muslim song or a song for us Muslims?" Just as we sing for any other culture. They have made sure that they mark the beginning of Ramadan by providing the traditional treats to all the faculty and all the staff in the buildings, which was very welcoming and very encouraging. They had, as I said, they had hosted multiple community conversations with the superintendent and administrators in a way to build those bridges. And they had presented in various ways to educators and other administrative on Ramadan and what to expect from fasting children and students. And most importantly, they were always available and open for teachers to reach out with any questions or concerns, and even for resources. This is a small video about the anti-racist panel discussion that has been taking place. I'm not going to share all of it, but because it's too long.
All right. I want to welcome you that are viewing. We are excited about this community read that we've been doing through December and now in January. We're planning on coming together. We are reading, this book is Anti-Racist, 20 Lessons on How to Wake Up, Take Action, and Do the Work by Tiffany Toole, and it's illustrated by Eyada. And we actually have some students from our Mason School District and also Mason community members that are going to discuss just some highlights of the book, some parts that they, some takeaways that they have. And so, yeah, we're just going to jump in and hear from our students in our community. So
I'll leave it at that, and then you can all see the video later if you like, just so I don't run out of time. Again, the DEI challenging our diversity, equity, inclusion, and justice. Since there's no in-person meetings because of the pandemic, they have made the challenges for you to pick upon which one you want to do and get involved with, which have been very interesting, challenging over the last few weeks. And this is another video. It's shorter, but I'd like you to hear part of it.
At Mason City Schools, we believe in living out our values. We have 3 big rocks, and the center rock is inclusive excellence. Inclusive excellence is so important to who we are because it's about the spirit of who we are. It's about people. It's about their stories. It's about calling people and inviting people in to the conversation, not just the easy conversations, but the hard conversations, the ones that make us grow together. As we think about inclusive excellence at Mason City Schools, it's not new work. It's work that's ongoing. It's work that continues on before us and past us.
Inclusive excellence is a journey. We're grateful to the staff, students, families, and community members who recognized almost 20 years ago that Mason was changing from a predominantly white rural district, and that in turn, our schools and the people who serve our learners and their families needed to change too. The evolution of our work and the ongoing partnerships we have built within our community inform who we are as an organization and where we are going. Each of us have a role to play in ensuring that each learner feels emotionally and physically safe, supported, and empowered.
One thing that we understand deeply here at Mason City Schools is inclusive excellence is important, but it's work that's never finished. It's work that's ongoing. It's work that started before us and will continue on past us. It's messy at times, but it's deeply important to our success as a community. And we hope that as you lean in and learn more about the principles of inclusive excellence here at Mason City Schools, you learn more of the tools and the strategies to live out diversity, equity, inclusion, and justice. And hopefully those tools will allow us to live out our values at Mason City Schools.
We celebrate and honor the rich identities in our learning community.
Our identity is the way that we make sense of the world. It's who we are. Our learners come to us with rich identities, and it is our job to both see and value the whole child. One tool we use to grasp a deeper understanding of diversity is the identity wheel. The identity wheel organizes the different traits and facets of who we are, beginning with our core, our personality, our disposition, whether we're introverted or extroverted, those things that we find out by ourselves by interacting with the world and interacting with relationships that we have with other people. That makes up our identity. And so the identity
I know I
lean in
here.
For who our students are and who we are as we show up for them.
We design educational experiences to make sure that each learner thrives.
When we think about equity and equality, Equality is more about sameness, making sure everyone has a balance and the same thing. Equity is about opportunity and access, really ensuring that each of our learners have the access and opportunity to an educational experience that's going to allow them to thrive. So when we think about an equitable design, we are really thinking about what are we doing within the learning experience that allows our students to have access and opportunity to be able to thrive. One of the ways to understand equity is to visualize the fence and baseball metaphor. Equal footing does not ensure access to the game. When we think of the fence and what we need to do to design an equitable experience, we may need to adjust and adapt what footing that our students or our children are standing on. One may say that equity, access, and justice would mean that there's no fence there at all, and that the students are a part of the game.
We intentionally build relationships and empathy so that everybody belongs.
When we think of the basic needs of humans, safety, connectedness, a sense of belonging, we have to think about those same needs as our learners come into the learning environment. What are we doing to build relationships with our students, to connect them to each other so that there's a sense of belonging? What are we doing to cultivate empathy so that our students are thinking beyond their own hearts and really caring for someone else? What are we doing to cultivate empathy in ourselves so that we're leaning into understanding what our students' needs are? A well-known developmental theory, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, also in line with the First Nation perspective of the human progression of basic needs and how humans need to fulfill those needs at the basic level in order to be available to learn and to really pull on that critical thinking, problem solving, creativity. So when we're designing learning in our environments, it's important that we make sure that the environments are physically, emotionally safe, that there's a sense of belonging and empathy so that our learners are available to learn and pursue worthy challenges.
We step up against bias and racism in our actions, policies, and practices.
It's not enough to just say that we're not biased. We actually have to do work on ourselves and identify any prejudice or stereotypes that may exist. Because bias is not about the person, it's about their behavior. So what are we doing to be able to identify those spaces in ourselves where we can grow so that we can really take care of the people around us? It's not enough to say that we're not racist. What are we doing to identify disparities within our policies and actions and practices to really be able to get at some systemic change and to be able to really see the people around us in their full humanity? When we are anti-bias and anti-racist, it allows us to create a just environment for our students. Some strategies we use in our district to step up to bias are interrupt, question, educate, and echo. When we do step up and use our voice, it makes a difference.
As you've learned, as part of our inclusive excellence work, we really focus around the DEIJ principles, the diversity, equity, inclusion, justice principles. And as we do that and we learn how to navigate our world with this lens, there will be hard conversations, and those conversations lead to actions. They lead to conviction. And I want to remind all of us, as we have those conversations, there is a time for safe spaces to have those. And then as we build our relationships with each other, and as we become honest with each other, then we become brave together and we move into that brave space together. So let me give you an example. As we've talked as a district about, for example, anti-racism or anti-bias work, those conversations can be tough conversations because we're unearthing years and years of hurt. And that reality is difficult. And as we move into that space as a community, those are times when we need to have brave conversations. We need to use the principles that you learned here to help us move forward from conversation to action to lifestyle. So I encourage you to continue to lean in, even when it's tough, to have those conversations, because we will become stronger as a community.
And again, I just want to close by saying, let's encourage those conversations. Some of them might not be easy. Some of them may be very disrupting, uncomfortable, but you always have to have that icebreaker that breaks into it. And as I said, diversity is being invited to the party, inclusion is being asked to dance, and belonging is dancing like no one is watching you. And we only have hope to keep spreading, to keep this message going.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Noha. Impressive and very informative indeed. I have to say that I've taken my son, my youngest son, Casey, who's a teacher, and his children, my grandchildren, to the Taste of Mason. And we talk about it even today. We remember the dancers, the musicians, the food, the friends that we made, and looking forward to being back in person. I noticed Tracy Carson mentioned in the chat that Taste of Mason happened virtually this year. So virtually can't compare with in person when it comes to that event, but I'm happy to see.
Yeah, I misspoke there because it was virtually, but as you said, it compares nothing to the real thing and in person. So hopefully next year we'll have it.
Well, thank you, my friend. Very, very, very well done.
There's one question.
Okay.
From Nikki. She wanted to know if there were other programs like this in other Warren County schools. If anybody knows.
I believe there is, but I can't speak on behalf of other schools because I really don't know.
I think Kings has started some work in this area because my son had taught at Kings before going to moving to Indian Hill High School. But Tracy Carson, you might have some comments on other school districts that perhaps are taking up where Mason is leading.
I apologize. I ended up having a slight thing for a minute there, and I missed just the tail end of that question, Shelley.
Just asking if you're aware of other school districts in Warren County or in Butler County that are following the lead of the DEIJ programming that Mason has.
So, part of it, we have been doing this, and you heard it from Noha. I've been in the district since 2005. So the Diversity Council started a year before me, but a lot of things of what she shared are part of our district's programming. And I think a lot of districts are moving in that direction in the whole region. The consortium years ago that was part of that piece, that wasn't really Diversity Council, that really was the district back in 2008, working on courageous conversations with Glenn Singleton. And if people are aware of him, he's a very kind of a thought leader in this space. That was actually done with us, Middletown, Fairfield, and Hamilton at the time. And I know Fairfield continues to do a lot of that work as well. So there are great colleagues doing a lot of this work in a lot of our school districts. But we also, and it was shared in that video, and it definitely feels we wrestle with this all the time. We know the work is never finished, and that it actually continues to evolve and change. And so it's important that we continue to do a lot of learning. Over the last few years, we've put in more intentional investments in it. One of the things we're excited about as a district is that we have teacher leaders now, 2 teacher leaders in each school who help lead our inclusive excellence teams at the school, which is really where a lot of that programming comes from. Teachers, I just absolutely believe, are the heart of the work, and that when you have them closely connected, they are able to do that in a way, in a space that makes a lot more, rather than it sort of being something that comes down from central office. And then we also this year, as part of our learning experience team, hired an amazing, who was featured in that video, Soraya Smith. She's been a Mason teacher for 12 years, but has a real heart for this work. And she is now our diversity, equity, and inclusion teacher leader. We have a lot of partnerships with, we've used consultants and things over the years, but there is something really important about having staff dedicated to helping do this work.
Very good. And just really quickly, Noha mentioned that Mason City Schools multicultural. Offhand, do you know how many languages are spoken throughout the Mason City Schools?
We have over 70 languages spoken in our schools, which is such a source of strength for us. And I love what Noha said, and it is a quote that really does, that's the diversity part that shows who we are. The part where it's on us, and as our community embraces that real, true, authentic inclusion, is how do we make sure that their voices are actually represented in our schools. So, but it is, when we say the world is a Mason, it's true. We have the world in our schools.
Very good. Thank you, Tracy. Thanks so much. Thanks, Noha.
Thanks to Tracy for providing me with all information and the slides to get this together. So thank you so much, Tracy.
Very good. Wonderful, wonderful presentation. Well, let's move on now. And let me introduce to you 2 gentlemen that I've met. Actually, I met them through Noha. Noha was part of and is part of the Braver Angels group. And she mentioned the group to me and to Bob. And we have attended several of the meetings of Braver Angels. So at this time, let me introduce to you David and Kouhyar, and let them speak to the Braver Angels organization and the work that they do, and even lead us through a little practice of Braver Angels discussions.
Great. Well, thank you so much. It is wonderful to be here with you today. My name is David Lapp. I'm a co-founder of the organization Braver Angels and the co-director of the Working People's Project at Braver Angels, which is an initiative to build working class leadership within our organization. Braver Angels is a national organization, but we started right here where I live in South Lebanon, Ohio, at the South Lebanon Community Center. And then also one of the people that I met while helping to put together one of those first workshops was Noha. Noha was a participant in that first workshop here in South Lebanon in December 2016. And then a second workshop that we ever did, I met Kouhyar, who is presenting with me here today. So Kouhyar, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Kouhyar Mostashfi, and I live in Springboro with my wife, Naveed. I immigrated to the US in the 90s from Iran after graduating high school to go to college, and decided to make US my home. And as David mentioned, I got involved with Braver Angels early on from after the election of Donald Trump and the new administration at the time. And as a leaning blue citizen, I was getting frustrated by the rancor and vitriol that we experience in our society. And I was very interested to learn about why people from the opposite side voted the way they did, and kind of learn about their personal stories. So that's why I accepted the invitation to the workshop, and I was so impressed by the program offered by Braver Angels that I decided to be an active participant in Southwest Ohio and move with establishing an alliance here.
And since we are, so Braver Angels is about political diversity and helping to bridge the partisan political divide. And so Kouhyar mentioned he leans blue, I lean red. In Braver Angels, we say red and blue, and we have others as well, people who don't lean red or blue. So I lean conservative, Kouhyar leans liberal, and so we're walking the talk here today. Here we work together, and so we Braver Angels, we got started, as I said, in just December 2016, 3 weeks after the 2016 election, right here in Ohio, in South Lebanon, just as an experiment to see what would happen if 10 people who had just voted for Donald Trump got together with 10 people who had just voted for Hillary Clinton. And what if we spent the weekend together? And that's what we did. And out of that came Braver Angels, which is now a national organization. And we have members in all 50 states and over 75 local alliances. But the first alliance was right here in Southwest Ohio, which is still running, which Kouhyar is helping to lead. So, and then we are going to show you just kind of a segment of what a Braver Angels workshop looks like, so you can see that as well. So I want to talk about let's start by thinking about the problem of polarization. What are we talking about when we say polarization? So this is the trend of political polarization is something that has been rising in the United States for at least 30 years through multiple administrations. So it didn't just begin, in 2016 with the 2016 presidential election. Obviously, it got highlighted and maybe exacerbated in ways that we got a lot of our attention, but it's been happening. Political scientists have been documenting this for at least the last 30 years. And now, political scientists tell us it's now at levels not seen since the 1850s. And when we talk about polarization at Braver Angels, we're not talking about disagreement on issues, because disagreement on issues is a fundamental part of a thriving democracy. We're going to disagree on how we think we should solve particular issues and so forth. We might even disagree on some at the level of values sometimes. But what we're talking about is how we regard our fellow citizens who differ from us politically. And when we talk about polarization, we're talking about the tendency to view our fellow Americans as other, as alien to us, strangers, almost incomprehensible. Like, how could people be like that? And unlikable. We don't like each other if we vote differently, and also untrustworthy. We don't trust each other, and morally compromised. That we tend to think if you are of the other side, then you're a bad person. So that's the kind of polarization that we're addressing and trying to increase understanding between people who vote differently. So in America, one way that political scientists measure this is in 1960, only 5% of Americans said that they would be uncomfortable with their son or daughter marrying someone of the other political party. By 2005, that percentage had moved up to about 40 to 45%. And so during that same period, attitudes towards interracial marriage showed the opposite trend. But today, many more people are uncomfortable with the idea of their son or daughter marrying someone of the other political party. So just to throw it out here to the group and just to get some discussion going here, what do you see as some of the sources of the rise in polarization over the past 30 years? So what are some of the sources of this rise in polarization over the past 30 years that you see and think about? And when we discuss this, keep in mind that it's happening around the world. Think about the great controversy in the UK about Brexit. Tremendous polarization over there around that issue, and in other parts of Europe too. So it's happening around the world, and it's across U.S. presidential administrations, and aim for complexity and not just blaming the other side in our responses. So I just want to, anyone want to get in on this? Raise your hand or just speak up. What are some of the sources of this rise in polarization over the past 30 years that you see? Just speak up.
Mark, I saw your hand up, and it may or may not pertain to this question, but you didn't have a chance to ask your question.
Well, I'll save my question for later, but in answer to the more direct question, I'll say that one of the reasons for the differences is a different worldview. For example, valuing the individual versus, for example, valuing the community or community mindset.
Yeah, different worldview approaches. Yes. Any other thoughts on what are some of the sources of this rise in polarization in the last 30 years?
David, I think personally, it's the winner take all aspect of our politics today, and very very much expressed well by Mitch McConnell when he said, "Winners govern and losers go home." I don't think that's the principle that our founding fathers envisioned in a constitutional republic. And the more we move away from bipartisanship and respecting and accommodating the differences of others in our programs and move towards it's one party governing.
Sure.
That's a very, very slippery slope.
Yeah.
If you look at the history of how one party governments and societies have treated individual liberties over history.
Yeah. So politics has always been about, being at war with each other to some extent. It's competition, right? I mean, you're friendly competition, you're strong competition. But yeah, there's a growing sense of, that we're out to exterminate each other. If we win, it's all us and no you. So yeah, Laura, you have your hand up. Laura, just go ahead and unmute yourself. There you go. Okay, Laura, we're not hearing you. Laura, are you there? Okay, we're not hearing you, so I'm gonna move along here. One of the other things that I think about to this question is, the rise of social media and the changing media landscape. Of course, people always cite Fox News, for conservatives, and MSNBC for progressives, and increasingly we're listening to conservatives watch Fox News only, progressives watch MSNBC only, and we're just fed kind of a diet of we're kind of in our own echo chambers. And of course, the rise of social media, increasingly, just the anonymous opinions online and so forth. So that also people will often talk about as contributing to our polarized landscape today. So I'm sure there's lots more we could cite for this. It's a complex thing, of course. So moving ahead, so the Braver Angels mission. Braver Angels is a citizens organization uniting red and blue Americans in a working alliance to depolarize America. So we're a grassroots organization, and our hope is to affect the political institutions, Congress, and so forth. But it begins from us as citizens at the local level, at the neighborhood level, working together. As individuals, we try to understand the other side's point of view, even if we don't agree with it. So there's a curiosity here that we have about each other. In our communities, we engage with those we disagree with, for looking for common ground and ways to work together. So we are, as we seek to understand each other, we're interested in looking for areas. Where are the areas of common ground? Not forcing areas of common ground that aren't there to come about, but just acknowledging where there already is common ground. And in politics, we support principles that bring us together rather than divide us. So we're looking for cooperation. And by the way, all of this, we acknowledge that there are profound issues of justice on the table. And we don't ask people when they participate in Braver Angels to set aside their activism for whatever side that is. Be an activist, and also look to better understand and work with people who you might disagree with, who might be on the other side. So we have the last thing here before I turn it over to Kouhyar is I'll say that what we describe as a Braver Angels rule is kind of fundamental to organization, and it relates to the DEI conversation we're having today, which is that at every level of leadership in our organization, we are half red and half blue. And our constant striving is to be an organization that reflects America, members from a variety of ethnic and racial backgrounds and ranging from working class to affluent. And so the idea is, if we're going to help form a more perfect union to depolarize America, it can't just be, white educated professionals, for instance, doing this. It has to be all of us, all of America, if we're going to help to form a more perfect union. So that's our Braver Angels rule. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to you, Kouhyar, to take it from here to describe our offerings.
So we have, over the course of past 4 years at the national level, we have developed many offerings to our citizens to participate and get different tools in their toolbox on how to go about getting depolarized and depolarize the community. One is the Red Blue workshop. It brings together a small, evenly divided group of conservatives and liberals, or reds and blues, for a series of exercises designed to help participants clarify disagreements, reduce stereotype thinking, and discover common values. More on this in a few minutes. Another offering that we have is the Skills for Communication Across the Divide workshop. It helps us through difficult political conversation with people in our life, learn how to talk across the divide in a constructive, empathetic way. And more on this in the next slide. Next offering is we offer Depolarizing Within workshop. It teaches participants to look within and develop strategies for engaging politics without demonizing, and how to constructively intervene in social conversations with like-minded peers. It is important to recognize that part of the polarization takes form in conversation with people from the same political camp. We need to learn to actively combat it. Next offering is Families and Politics. It is a program, most of us have heard of stories about relationship among loved ones breaking down in our polarized climate. This workshop shows participants how to talk about politics with their loved ones in a way that brings us closer together and not farther apart. We also offer debates, webinars, and podcasts. We offer other programs such as Braver Angels debates on various hot button topics, webinars, and podcasts that demonstrate a new approach to talk politics among people that disagree politically. And last but not least, we also offer one-on-one conversations. This is a novel way for different type of people to connect personally and as citizens who are concerned for their communities and country. The process involves two structured 1-hour conversations between two people using an online platform. Next slide, please. I'm going to briefly talk about this, the Skills for Communication Across the Divide workshop. One of the main reasons political discussions, turn heated is because each side in the conversation feels the pressure to change their minds. That we always feel that the other side is trying to get us to submit to their views, and we react negatively to that. So skill workshop help us avoid that. Another reason these conversations are difficult is because each person is often unable to express their point in a calm and constructive way. As a result, they often feel they are not being heard. Skill workshop help us learn tools to achieve this. In these conversations, our ultimate goal is for the other person to hear what we have to say and hopefully achieve some consensus. However, without employing certain tools, we often fail this goal. So having these this workshop teaches us how to have a political conversation with someone that we disagree, and let us be heard, and also respect the other side for them to also be heard. Next slide, please. We wanted to give you a glimpse of what we are all about. So we wanted to show you a segment from CNN because this shows Braver Angels in action and provides you a view of what the Braver Angels experience look like.
All right, sadly this week, we saw politicians acting like preschoolers again. A meeting that was supposed to be about Syria turned into another instance of name calling and finger pointing. And what's worse, this behavior is being mirrored by regular people all across the country. Liberals and conservatives can't talk to each other anymore. It's tearing up friendships and families. I recently found, though, a group that's trying to heal this division. It's called Better Angels. And since 2016, they've been hosting workshops all over the country, bringing folks together to find common ground. I went to one of their red-blue workshops last weekend in Evanston, Illinois. Take a look.
So the goals are more understanding, seeing if there's something in common.
Here's something special. Conservatives and liberals sitting side by side, talking, smiling, actually listening to each other.
Hamilton Chang here as a red. I'm coming here out of frustration in some ways because I feel like, we've been excommunicated from a lot of our friends in the last couple of years, and it makes me sad.
They're here for a workshop put on by the Better Angels group. Their goal is to help bridge the divide among liberals and conservatives, and some community members have come to watch.
I'm Drew Morrison. I came here as a blue today. We need to be able to have real constructive dialogue among each other, even among issues that we may disagree on.
Now, they split up into reds and blues. Reds for conservative, blues for liberal, and they discuss the stereotypes they think the other side believes about them.
Judgmental. Anti-religion.
And are there any grains of truth to these perceptions?
Hyper PC. Okay, so what is true here?
We attack people for saying the words rather than attacking the words themselves.
Is there a kernel of truth in the stereotype that the Reds are closed-minded, intolerant?
There are principles that I stand by. It may look intolerant in some ways, but abiding by the rule of law with respect to immigration, abiding by the rule of law for things like that, it looks intolerant.
Both say they're surprised by what they hear from the other side.
A lot of Reds recognize that they're, the descendants of immigrants and they're pro-immigration. A lot of ink and TV airtime has been spilled on some of the sensational and very dramatic things that have been occurring at the border. And that really obscures, I think, the more nuanced conversation of a nation having control of its borders and welcoming immigrants, but doing it through appropriate channels and means.
What really struck me was when Larry said, we believe in science and we want to use science to solve issues such as climate rather than rushing to a sweeping government program, which is like, we recognize for ourselves, oh yeah, we do kind of do that. And you said, yeah, you do that.
I was struck about how the other side has principles that they live by. And we have principles too. And it seems like we both get into trouble when we have absolutes.
The liberals are then asked to sit in the middle of the group and talk about why they think progressive ideas are the best to resolve America's problems. As they answer, the conservatives are allowed only to listen, no rebuttals, no interruptions.
I think that inequality causes some people to feel like burn it all down. I don't want to burn it all down. So I think, frankly, in the interest of preserving capitalism, we need to engage in as you say, leveling the playing field, redistribution, giving people a stake in the system.
Blue values in terms of being accepting and open to very diverse points of view, more open-minded about moral values, right? Like, so same-sex marriage, sexual orientation, gender fluidity, these things I think are good for the United States because they're acknowledging and giving a voice and including groups that have been historically marginalized have had no voice.
What are your reservations or concerns about your own side, about the blue side?
Some of my experiences have been that in a lot of cases, if you don't adhere to every single value or every single position, then you're marginalized, or you're seen as sort of betraying the cause in a way. Yeah.
I agree that words matter and that words can hurt. But I see arguments being shut down. Mm-hmm. I see people not being allowed to speak.
Next, it's the conservatives' turn.
I think what's great about the red vision is it emphasizes personal freedoms. And I think that in order for people to soar to great heights, a maximization in personal freedoms is partially responsible.
The ability to progress and allow a society to reach, and people within the society, individuals, to achieve the most that they can achieve with the least amount of interference from outside. So me, it's a positive thing.
What are your reservations or concerns about your own side?
I think with personal responsibility, personal freedoms, there will be people who are lost. I think it's a harsh truth. We lose our messaging and we lose our principle of caring and compassion by saying, hey, free market, right, sink or swim. We have to acknowledge that people sink and make sure that we take care of those people.
At the end of the day, everybody said this experience is going to impact their personal interactions with people on a day-to-day basis.
It's just great to hear reasonable conservative voices in the room, and then when I'm in my friend group that's very sordid and people make some extreme comments about all those people, I can say, well, not all those people. Come on, let's just, pull back.
Same, right? Being that ambassador, we'd started out with why are we here? And I'd said something that basically to the extent of being excommunicated from some of my friends for many, many years, friends that I love. So I have some phone calls to make and have some listening versus talking.
My takeaway is that neither side is a monolith, that there's a recognition that these are thorny problems that we're trying to address, and that there are going to be some very nuanced solutions to those problems.
So you were an observer the whole time. You were taking copious notes. What do you think would happen if stuff like this was going on all across the country? But whether it's a weekend where 100,000 of these things went down, what do you think would happen in America?
I think people would be better equipped to have these sorts of conversations and think in terms of working together towards solutions to problems rather than seeing the other side as just a barrier to progress.
We got to know each other a little bit better as people.
What is causing you to want to be this deeply involved in this bipartisan work?
It's about relationships. I'm a physician, I'm a parent, I'm a spouse, I'm a daughter, I'm a friend. All of our relationships are built on communication, and we do it very poorly, and we're getting worse and worse at it.
We can disagree on religion, right? Heaven and hell. And yet, for some reason, we're at a point in time in history in this country where you can't disagree about policy.
Do you feel like you learned anything today that might help you bridge that gap?
Absolutely. To be able to hear, try to be as non-judgmental as possible, right? But just to try and pay attention and try to listen as opposed to trying to prove or defend. It was just a good exercise.
One woman said the experience made her more comfortable sharing her voice as a conservative who lives in a liberal town.
I was apprehensive about coming because sometimes today I don't feel like maybe being a conservative or having a conservative voice is PC. And so I think maybe there are a lot of people out there that maybe have this point of view, but they're not really saying it. I really believe if groups like this could get together, take the next step, talk about issues, and sit down and hash it out, I really think we could come up with some solutions, and we may even do a better job than some of our politicians.
You couldn't do worse.
There you go.
Real signs of hope.
All right, back to you, Kouhyar.
All right. So there are ways that you could get involved. We welcome you to browse our website, particularly find online events to take part in our various offerings that I mentioned. Thanks to COVID, in a way, we had to learn how to bring a lot of our workshops and our activities online. So now, because of that, someone in Ohio could participate in a workshop in, Texas, which wasn't possible before pandemic. So now there is a lot of events that are available, various workshops, and you can learn about them and sign up for them online in our website to participate in one of the workshops. And we currently have 2 local Braver Angels alliances in Southwest Ohio, the Southwest Ohio Alliance, which is based in Lebanon, and the Cincinnati Alliance. Again, we encourage you to join one of these local alliances and get involved locally. We provided the emails for these alliances for you for further inquiry. With that, I think we are ready to take questions.
Yeah, so we'll just take any questions or comments anybody has about what we just shared.
David, I know you mentioned that this started in South Lebanon. And could you talk a little bit about how you made the connection with other groups that were interested and how that took off?
Yeah, so what happened at that gathering in South Lebanon was, people said, well, this has been a powerful experience. Would love to see this happen in other communities. And then NPR, they were doing a segment on the political divide at that time, and they had an hour-long segment on that. And they found out about our little gathering here in Ohio, and they invited one red and one blue from that gathering to appear on the show. And so, people are listening all over the country, and people started writing us and calling us and saying, love to do this in my community. How could I do that? And so we just started, helping people to do that. And then we did a bus tour throughout for 3 weeks, just traveling the country like a rock band or like a minor league baseball team or something. Just putting on workshops. And the way that the model developed is that, like in that workshop that we just saw in the Van Jones workshop, the people who were moderating that, they're not full-time Braver Angels employees. They're volunteers in Illinois, and they take online training to be a moderator. And they're the ones that moderate it. And then you also have local organizers recruit the people. So it's very locally volunteer and grassroots driven. So that's the way it kind of spread. We provided some basic resources, but then, local people took it up and did it.
And would you clarify the name change? Because
yes, you should. Yes. Right. Yes, it was referred to as Better Angels in there. So there was a copyright issue with another organization that was named Better Angels, and so we just changed our name to Braver Angels to resolve that. But it also turns out to have a really significant meaning for us. In order to have these conversations with each other about political difference, that requires a level of courage and bravery that, and to work together to see, despite the strong differences of opinion, how we might be able to work together and what areas of common ground there are. That takes a tremendous amount of bravery and courage. So we shifted the name Braver Angels about a year ago, and it's been very apt.
Very good.
But the name Better Angels, the original name, of course, comes from Abraham Lincoln's first inaugural address, which was delivered, just a couple weeks after I think the first states had seceded from the Union, and Abraham Lincoln was appealing to the better angels of our nature, and so that's where that's the historical origins of that name.
Any other questions or comments? I know I joined a national meeting when you had the national meeting not too long ago, and I think they ended up with hundreds, if not thousands, of people across the country and other countries that were
Yes.
joining the Zoom call.
Yeah, that was really something. So that was after the events of January the 6th. We really felt a need to come together and listen and talk with each other. And so we called it Hold America Together. And there were 4,500 people, conservative, liberal, centrist, people who showed up on that call. And so yes, a very powerful moment.
Very powerful. Any other comments or questions for David or Kouhyar?
Hey, this is Yasmin. How's everyone doing?
Good, good, Yasmin. Welcome.
How are you? I am Yasmin Brown-Jones from the Westchester Liberty Chamber Alliance. Great stuff. I kind of read through some of the information about Braver Angels before today's call. I'm just wondering, I think it's great. I think it's an absolute great thing to be doing in this day and time so that everybody's talking. But communicating and getting this out to the different diverse areas of our communities is so important, because I'm sure you all know, not only is there diversity in political thought processes, but there's just diversity, which is what makes the world go around, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
absolutely.
What are the initiatives for just really communicating and getting this in front of everybody? I mean, diverse groups, is that part of your initiative right now? What you're doing?
Yes,
Okay.
absolutely. So thank you so much for saying that, Yasmin, and would love to connect with you as well. So to hear your ideas and how you might be able to help. But yes, I mean, it won't surprise you that the kind of people so we're a membership organization, anyone can become a member. The kinds of people that just naturally flock to us are, white, educated, college-educated professionals.
Exactly.
And as I think I mentioned, that's wonderful. We're glad that white, educated professionals, find it valuable and want to help, work together. But we're not gonna succeed in our mission if we're not reflecting America in terms of the people who are coming together. So we have a people of color group that is helping us to Braver Angels members who are people of color who are intentionally reaching out and seeking to build leadership by people of color. I'm leading a project called the Working People's Project, which is looking to build a diverse group of working class people. So we have that social class diversity as well, Black, brown, and white working class people taking leadership. And so yes, I mean, I can't tell you that we're firing on all, pistons right now with that. Hopefully in a couple of years we'll have, a membership that is more reflective of the country. But it's in our, it's built in, like I read the Braver Angels rule. It's something that we're constantly striving for. And so we just really, again, I'll put my email in the chat. I really welcome your ideas on how we might be able to get better at that. And Kouhyar, anything else you want to add to that?
Yeah, we at the national level, we have developed a program called the Braver Angels Ambassador Program, which we train individuals that are familiar with our work to go to different communities, to different school systems, to different places of worship, and kind of spread our message and communicate what we're all about, and kind of spread the message that way. We are a new organization, and most of our effort are being driven by volunteers. So, I mean, as you could imagine, there are some limitations with that. But the problem of diversity and how it needs to be solved is at the forefront of everybody at the organization, and we emphasize that in various meetings as and a desired goal that we want to achieve.
I think that's awesome.
Thank you, Yasmin.
Very good. Well, thank you. Thanks so much to both of you for sharing the Braver Angels message. And I know Alfonso, Cornea, and Jean Krebs are also in the audience along with Yasmin. And I'd like for them to just share a little bit, very briefly, about programs that they are working on. So Yasmin, since you are here, would you share what you're doing? Because I know you're doing very effective programs in your neck of the woods.
Sure. Thank you, Shelley. Again, I think I did introduce myself. I am Director of Membership Services for the Westchester Liberty Chamber Alliance, Yasmin Brown-Jones. And we are doing some very impactful work, I would consider. When I started working for the Chamber over 3 years ago, our president, Joe Henson, who's on the call, and I have had, discussions, several discussions since then, about how to be more intentional in diversifying our community as well as our chamber. So with that in mind, we have continuously looked for ways to educate, inform, and just bring about a different type of membership, as well as just, getting out in the community, meeting all different types of businesses. So with the last year that we've had, 2020 itself was diverse enough. We started back probably in the June timeframe, as we were dealing with the pandemic and then social unrest. Everyone saw the same video, everyone saw the same things that were happening just throughout our country. And I raised 3 African-American male sons who were completely unrest, would be mildly putting it. They were all over the map. They were just, all over the place with how they felt, with what was happening with the pandemic. And then they felt like they were being told as Black men that they were less than, and being shown that, in what was unfolding in our country. So I developed a relationship over the last several years with our police department, our local Westchester Police Department. And I also direct a program called Leadership 21 for our chamber. And we had just recently had our assistant chief of police in that class. So I contacted them and said, hey, sons in my house, sons all over our community. And this was just not Black or African-American males. It was, my kids are diverse in their friendships. So a lot of their white friends and just friends of all different races were also very uncomfortable with what was happening. They were protesting every day. They wanted to know more, hear more. And then again, young minds needed to understand more. So I took a group of young people to the police department. We sat down. It was supposed to be an hour-long meeting. And this was a diverse group, mostly Black males, but white males, white females, Black females. It was supposed to be an hour. It turned into 2 hours and 40 minutes at the police department. They talked, they discussed what they were feeling. They talked about what they always thought about the police department, what they always saw in the media, which we all know is not always what it is. So that spun off into some community initiatives that we took under the umbrella of the chamber. And we had 2 additional sessions at one of the local churches where we invited the business community to the first session. And then the second session was parents and again, young people. It was overwhelmingly positive in the aspect that people were able to talk and listen. We call them courageous community conversations. We just had a session in March of this year, 2021 also, which was session number 4, in partnership with what we have in our community called Live the Dream. It's a organization that has or hosts the annual MLK Day events and that sort of thing. So in partnership with them and a couple of other organizations, the chamber was able to have a Zoom or virtual session. The sessions last year were all in person, by the way, even through COVID. With COVID safety in mind, we spread out in the church and just really had great conversations. And it was a diverse group of attendants or participants, all over the place, but our police were there. We had a facilitator, out of Middletown area, Kendall Wright, and chamber member as well. And it really just opened dialogue. I had young people leaving the police station saying, wow, don't know that I felt the same way leaving the police department that I did coming in. Didn't really, change what was happening in our world, in our community, but I was able to change maybe just the interactions of young people in our local police department, or what they thought about police or policing. So I encourage you all, our chamber is going to continue to do more, but I encourage everyone, I would encourage everyone to be intentional about understanding more, listening more, and doing more. So that's really.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
And can I add something to that, please? If I could, what Yasmin was saying, and that is that what Yasmin was able to do on the reverse side is she became a consultant to our Westchester Police Department too, because I think there was a real opportunity for our police department to get an understanding. So I think one of the things we have to remember that the learning is both ways. And we surely found that our police department is open to, which first they have to be open to this, but there was a great opportunity for them to learn and grow from this. And they have done that too. Would you agree with that, Yasmin?
Yes, absolutely. We had local protests that came to Westchester. And because of the meeting that we had initially with our police department, they, believe it or not, were able to know about those ahead of time from the young folks that were in earlier. They understood more, they supported the groups. So it really has turned into a community, action event, just to support each other more, just to do more. So it's important. It moves the needle a little bit at a time, but let me tell you, it makes a difference.
Very good. Excellent. Excellent. Well, Alfonso, would you give us a few comments about what you're doing with chamber members and as a top 100 Cincinnati community leader, as listed in the current Cincinnati magazine? Let us hear from you, please.
Let me just share something that I have discussed with your Hinson several times. It's a different angle on this event. This event has been outstanding. Congratulations. Every single presentation has been great. And I have learned a lot. It was very, very good. So this is the angle that I want to share with you. To have a future success in our region, we need to grow our region. Okay? To grow our region, we need several things. First, have full employment in the companies in our region. The second one, attract more companies to our region. And to attract more companies to our region is not easy. And it is not easy. Why? Because our metro area is not growing very much and our state is not growing. So how do you grow your region if the state is not growing and the companies are not growing? And that's a big challenge. We need strong and intentional efforts to try to welcome others that are not like us and that are connected in the community, engaged in the community. And this is why Cincinnati Cares and other organizations can do a big support for that. Now, think about this. All metro areas are trying to do the same thing. Indianapolis is trying to do the same thing. Columbus is trying to do the same. Cleveland is trying to do the same thing. So what we need to do is do this better than the others. So we have a chance to grow our region, to grow our metro area, and to grow our regional gross national product. If we don't grow our national product, we're going to start losing Fortune 500 companies, etc. So we need to do this better than the others. And I think this is an example of something that every region of the metro area or the state can do to try to bring more people, more residents to our state. And I congratulate Michelle and Joe for this. This is a very, very good event. Thank you very much.
Alfonso, thank you so much for serving on the planning committee for so many years and your support as well. And Gene Krebs, we certainly want to bring you on stage and hear from you about the organization that you're working with and just your latest activities dealing with bridging divides. Gene Krebs.
So thank you, Shelley. I'm part of the publishing consortium called AHA Process. For those of you familiar with the book Bridges Out of Poverty and the Getting Ahead programs, they've recently, I'm co-author of Bridges Across Every Divide. I'll go into that a little bit, but the Bridges Out of Poverty is the mother book of all of this. It came out in 1999. There are 200 communities in America that are known as Bridges sites. That's where this is the dominant philosophy that they're using to propel their communities ahead. They range in size from Houston, and locally here it's Marion, Ohio, near where Shelley was raised, and Toledo, Ohio are both hotbeds of this. It has been working in a variety of areas, 47 states. I think it's translated into 7 languages now as soon as we get the Romanian version done. This is a unique thing that's been interpreted for everybody depending upon their local situation. There's a book out there called Tactical Communication. It's written earlier about police. The police chief of Saginaw, Michigan, flat out said back in August that if George Floyd lived in Saginaw, Michigan, he'd still be alive, for the fact that their police force had been trained in the Bridges Out of Poverty model. So it goes into a way to begin to think about how other people view things. The book I've done, Bridges Across Every Divide, is to help people understand how that book, the half written by Phil, explains the core methodology of the Bridges model. Then my part of the book is more about how do you advocate, how do you get your policies implemented. The new chapter I'm submitting on the Bridges Out of Poverty mother book, shall we say, has to deal with race. And it has to do with the use of zoning as a way to, and goes back to zoning laws, redlining, and how that was used to disenfranchise 15% of the population on a near permanent basis. It's an interesting structure. For those of you who are not familiar with it, I would encourage you to look at it. And for those of you who, for Braver Angels, came out that you need to get more people who are not like you, more people than just the middle class college educated involved. It goes into some very good insights and details in those structures as to the 3 classes in America, self-identified, and how to begin to reach out to them. It's based upon the research out of University of Wisconsin. So with that, I'll turn it back over to our MC, Master of Ceremonies, Joe Henson, who looks like he's getting ready to say something.
Gene, you've done a great job. Thank you very much. And we want to thank everybody. I know there's some opportunities out there that a lot of different people have that they would like to, I'm sure, talk about, and maybe some additional questions. But I'd like to go back to Arla if I could. And Arla, obviously, with her involvement with the Area Progress Council of Warren County. Arla, could you tell us about what's going on with the Progress Council? Do you have any opportunities for people getting together in our region, great things that you're doing in Warren County?
Well, as you know, Area Progress Council is pretty issue focused. We don't have events, just no offense, any of you Chamber of Commerce is okay. But this group does not have business after hours. We don't have a lot of socialization things. Most of the activity happens on our board for our board of directors. As far as events happening, we're going to have our Project Excellence banquet, thank God, this year, but it's very limited. Normally that's open and tickets are bought, but through the generosity of we have some sponsors that have kindly donated money, that event's going to be less than 100, being held in a room that holds 500. So we can all social distance appropriately. Our next thing that we're probably going to be working on is hosting the State of the County. That's in cooperation with our with our commissioners. So when it comes to board diversity, many years ago, I came up with like a spreadsheet, a matrix. It's a matrix. So we kind of look at, do we have enough girls? Do we have people do we have enough boys? What's our age grouping? And we focus more on the diversity of business. So do we have attorneys, real estate folks? I don't know, Bill, think of something else, whatever. When you look at the business manufacturers, because this is a business group, that's kind of how we've looked at it. And wherever we can find somebody, regardless of their gender, regardless of their skin color, we are looking for folks to fill those kind of voids so that we have a business overview. And luckily for us, I think it's quite diverse. So don't know if you're interested. Our website is apcwc.org. It's very bland. We don't have anything to sell you. I can't give you a good deal on anything. It's just my board of directors is comprised of kind-hearted visionaries who want a great place for their grandkids to grow up. And they don't say that, I say that. So if you find any misspelling in that website, let me know, because it's these fingers who make it happen. Thank you very much, Joe, for an opportunity to mention Area Progress Council. The leadership program is under Area Progress Council, and Project Excellence, which is now $1.5 million endowment that we utilize the earnings to identify, recognize, and reward public educators in our community.
Arla, you've done a lot for Think Regional. I want to personally thank you. A lot of behind the scenes, but obviously through leadership and your involvement, you have a real passion for Think Regional also. So thank you for what you do. Our region is better for having you here. So thank you.
I'm humbled. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Something that I would like to mention, if I may, we too have not been able to do after-hour events because of COVID-19. But I will tell you this, that we are really excited that we're going to have our first in-person event on July the 13th. It's going to be our Regional Business Expo. And it's, yes, thank you, Jean. It's going to be at Lakota West High School. It's going to be from 12 o'clock to 4 o'clock. And we had it there in 2019. And when we had it in 2019, before COVID, we had 122 booths and another 44 restaurants that participated, and about 2,000 people attended. So it's a pretty nice event. We don't exactly know what we're going to get during this, hopefully post-COVID, but we are moving forward. And I will tell you that we are working with the governor's office. We're working with the Butler County Health Department, our local officials, and we're going to make this safe. We're going to make it exciting. We're going to make it fun. I can tell you the community and the business community in our region is really excited about this. And so I want to invite everybody to be a part of that. It's on the 13th, which is a Tuesday in July, from 12 to 4. It's going to be safe. It's going to be fun. And we're going to open up the community to say, welcome back. Here we are. We're open for business. And you heard me say regional. So this is all of us that we're going to get together. And we do have both exhibitors and people that come from the Northern Kentucky, Cincinnati, and Dayton markets because of our strategic location. So would love to have you there. And we're going to really have a great time with that. So we wanted to mention that. Shelley, I'd like to turn it over to you to say, A, if there's anything you would like to add, or if you would like to include anybody else on this call that has something that they would like to add to our event today.
Joe, I'd like to remind us that Mark Romito had a question that he agreed to wait until the question and answer session. So if it's okay, I think I'd like to hear from Mark.
Yeah, let's do that. Thank you, Bob.
Thanks, Bob. Yeah, my whole question, I was just wanting to raise this, and I think part of it was kind of answered with the with some of the other presentations. But you know, corporately, we've been having these what we call crucial conversations with at AT&T, and one of the things I've kind of run into is I guess a lack of courage, if you will, for people to step up. And I know some folks are kind of concerned with a lot of this, you know, cancel culture that's out there. And, you know, if they make a comment, for example, that they may be somehow ostracized or something like that. And I guess I was just kind of curious for those folks who've had, you know, conversations, and it sounds like some of the schools have, and I know through the Braver Angels they have. I mean, how is the best way or a way of getting people to really open up and speak what's on their mind, as opposed to maybe not participating or shutting down and just kind of nodding their head as, oh yeah, I agree, but not, you know, not really having much of a discussion because you have all these people who agree. And anyway, that was what I was kind of throwing it open for, just to see what other folks may have done to get that kind of good participation.
Good question.
I'm happy to give my own perspective on that, how we think about that at Braver Angels. One is there's two things, and they work in tandem at Braver Angels. One is structure. So when we meet, you know, it's not just, you know, just we work hard at crafting, you know, guardrails that enable a frank, open conversation with each other. So an example is if the question in a Brave Angels Red Blue workshop is, what are the concerns and reservations you have about your own side and its leaders? I'm not going into the concerns and reservations I have about the other party's side and its leaders, right? I'm talking about, well, I'm addressing the question. And that just enables, you know, there to be structure in the conversation. So structure is good. But secondly, then within that structure, just making it clear that we're all here to speak our minds and to listen to each other. And we may hear, you know, we may disagree with some things that we hear today, but let's try to listen with curiosity to each other. And so just making it clear that we're really serious about that part of it, that we're here to, for people to say what's on their hearts and minds. And for our moderators, we, you know, unless there's something that's just like completely, completely hurtful or offensive that somebody's saying, our moderators, you know, don't interject and say, oh, you know, and try to interject and moderate people's opinions and views. We have the structure, but we also emphasize that, listen, we're here to listen to each other in curiosity and respect. And so say what's on your mind.
Mark, I'll share something I learned when I had a business coaching franchise. At the end of all of our sessions where we would have diverse people together, we had a tradition called a WIFLE section, W-I-F-L-E, and it stands for what I feel like expressing. And the rules are you sit around in a circle and everybody gets the chance to participate. What we had was a little ball that would be tossed around the circle until everybody had had a chance to speak. And the rules were that no one else could speak except the person holding the ball. So it made it very safe that when you said what you were thinking, that nobody was going to judge you, comment, criticize. The goal was to create an environment where it was safe for people to share what was on their mind, and everybody had the opportunity to do that. So we really didn't allow anybody to sit in that wiffle circle and not contribute. They had to say something. And I think if you have a leadership team or you have a department team that's working on an issue, if you want to be sure that you're getting input from everybody that's there, that's a technique that works pretty well for us. And you know, that technique is used around the world by that coaching franchise.
This is Yasmin. I would certainly say the sharing that David and Bob have given is important and effective for sure. But there has to be also a trust level. I saw that a lot in the young people that we took to the police department. It took an hour for them to have a little bit of trust enough to share what they were honestly thinking and feeling. It's interesting, you could see it on their faces, but it didn't come out of their mouths for about an hour or so. And people have to trust that what they're saying is going to be heard. And I think the other piece in that is really getting to know people, getting to know your community, because people trust you when they know you. So
that's true.
Good.
It's hard to have bias once you learn
right.
about somebody else's life experience, right?
Right.
Good.
Great,
I know that
thanks
we're
for
going
that.
to wrap up with kind of a review of what we started with, which is the reflections of Better Angels or of Think Regional. And I'll just pick up on what Alfonso was saying about, you know, the need to attract and retain businesses, which is a statement of the original Think Regional goals and mission. And we started the session, the first session in 2014 with a blank slate as far as what would we focus on in order to achieve the goals of economic growth, job creation and growth, and quality of life growth. And we knew that part of that was going to be attracting and retaining the businesses and the people that would make that happen. And just to recount, we came up with 6 factors. And I say we, not the committee, but the 170 people who were there came up with a list of about 25. And when we asked them to prioritize out of all that list, we got 6 that kind of separated themselves from the others. So these are something to consider in terms of how do you achieve that regional growth that we all are looking for. And one was infrastructure, transportation and energy, cross-government collaboration to support development, where a lot of the business owners talked about the complications of trying to build a business in different counties in Southwest Ohio and how difficult that was sometimes. Innovation and entrepreneurship support, a skilled and educated workforce development, healthcare and quality of life, and then the topic we focused on today, diversity, equity, and inclusion. If we keep focusing on those 6 things over time and do it in a collaborative way across the regions of our Southwest Ohio, we're going to do better, as Alfonso said, we're going to do better in attracting businesses. One of the reasons Amazon didn't come here was because they didn't see the kind of skilled, diverse workforce that they were looking for to site their second headquarters. So if we keep working on all of those things, I think we're going to get to where we want to be.
I would like to follow up on that by just saying that we did record today's program, and we will plan to post the recording of today's program on the Think Regional website. And also, I did an interview for the program that Warren County Community Services sponsors currently, and has for many years, called Feeling Good. And I host that program. And this month, all of this month, we've been seeing it on ICRC, Miami Valley Cable, on the WCCS website, and also on YouTube. Some additional reflections about Think Regional and interviews of some of our speakers today. So you'll be able to click on that link, and that program went on for an hour. So you can see that when you start discussing and feeling the topic of diversity, equity, inclusion, and justice, that conversation should and could continue to go on and on and on. And I hope that today you gained some energy and enthusiasm and some great resources that you will in turn share with others, who will in turn share with others, to make our region, our state, and our country, and our world a better place for everyone to achieve and to succeed. Thank you.
Since we have just a couple of minutes before the 12:30 gong goes off, why don't we open it up to anybody who would like to leave a final comment about the day or about anything that has gone on. Just unmute yourself and, feel free to comment, share a thought, and we would love to hear from people who haven't spoken yet today. Any takers? We have 34 people.
Thank you, Bob. This is Kimberly Gates. I'm with the Warren County Career Center. And this has been a wonderful summit, and I've really learned a lot, and I'm excited about a lot of things I can take back to our team for our students and community. And I had shared in the chat that we partner with Beach Acres on the character effect, which is for our social emotional curriculum, and really focuses on character strengths for students to recognize in themselves, but also in one another. And it's kind of building a culture of where we, no matter what role we play in our school community, that we all look for the best and look for when those characters shine. And I love Yasmin's word intentional, to be intentional about recognizing that in ourselves and in our students and in staff ourselves too, and one another. And that the diversity council that was shared, I'm really excited about taking that back to our team, because I think that's just another pillar that we can add to strengthen and build that culture at our school. So I'm really excited and just appreciative of this opportunity to be with you all today. So thank you.
I did want to recognize Kathleen Blake. I'm not going to let her get away without saying something today. Kathleen Blake and I were directors of community leadership programs when I worked for the Chamber in Middletown, and Kathleen worked in Clinton County leadership, and Bill Thornton as well, director of the Leadership Warren County program. You two have been a critical part of this planning team for years. And Kathleen and Bill, take turns, whatever you'd like to say, because I'd like to hear from you.
I am now retired and wish very much I could just tomorrow morning zip back into the leadership program director's position and start all over again. I've got so many ideas out of today. Thank you so much. It was a wonderful event. Appreciate it.
We're going to be tapping your little shoulder there, though.
I hope so. I'm ready for a volunteer position.
Good, Kathleen. Good to know. Bill Thornton, what about you?
I think based on that, Kathleen is going to be appearing before our leadership class sometime this summer as we try to resume back to live programming.
Great.
It's been
this year's class that started out 2020. It's now 2020 plus. It is the intention of our program to not only give folks information, but to have them have experiences. And although you are all very beautiful in your flat little faces, it's not the same thing as experiencing a walk through the wastewater treatment plant. Just saying. So we are going to be focused this summer on doing some tours, outside things, and we really do have to do the wastewater treatment plant thing. It's just
Kathleen, while Arla's talking about summer events, why don't you give a plug for Dinner in the Fields and maybe explain what that's about, and Jeff Murphy as well.
Well, I hope Jeff knows more than I do, because I know that it is the second Saturday of August. It was originally planned to be at a location that it is no longer going to be. So I haven't heard where the new location is. But Saturday, August 13th from 4 p.m. to 8 p.m. I believe it's the 13th, second Saturday of August.
And just describe for people that aren't aware of what it's about.
Well, Dinner in the Fields is a fundraiser for Leadership Clinton and its Youth Collaborative program. We serve 300 people. Tickets are purchased, and so only limited to 300. And it is all celebrating Clinton County's agriculture. All the food and the meats, poultry are all raised in Clinton County and cooked for you by volunteers. So it's a wonderful event. So I look forward to getting, I'll give Arla more information to send out to the people present. Thank you.
August 14th.
It is, and they also they have a pie auction that is unbelievable for desserts. So I've gone for several years, and it's a wonderful event. I would recommend to any of you to attend.
Information to come.
All right, very good.
Anybody else have a comment?
I have a quick question, Yasmin. I was curious when you were speaking about the students who were meeting with the police department and they had this long conversation. I just was curious, what was it that was the discussion that was kind of like the turning point for them to really start trusting? And what was the discussion, I think, that you think was most revealing? If you can do that.
Absolutely, thank you. Well, the George Floyd incident was what led to it. And the protest started downtown Cincinnati, and they were taking carloads and meeting at my house to discuss their day before they started on their way. So, I'd say a prayer with them and ask, questions. And then I said, I hear all of this, rumblings about the police department and the mistrust and what's going on. All police, just like all people are not bad people. And so, you know, their experience and all they had seen was what media was showing and what they knew. So that was the gist of the meeting. And once we got there, and you know, with young people, they think a little bit differently. They do have to have a trust factor in place to open up. So they did not want a facilitator. I was going to actually take someone to kind of guide or facilitate or moderate the conversation. And they immediately said, facilitation, moderation means control. We don't want it controlled if you really are taking us to have an honest conversation. So they went in, there was about 14 of us total, mixture of all people. They had someone with a laptop who took notes. Again, it took a while for the wall to break down. And once it did, you know, the police chief gave us an additional hour and 40 minutes of his time. So it's totaling 2 hours and 40 minutes. And that has spun off into what they call the Black Action Committee. And they're on Facebook if anyone's interested. It is a diverse group of young people, high school age, college age, some out of college and working. But the Black Action Committee is their group name now. And that group is largely part of the group that I actually took into the police department. But again, the trust factor, it took a while. It's a work in progress. But again, I felt like they left. We spent 30 minutes in the parking lot after the meeting. And they said, you know, I at least respect our local police chief because he seems like he wants to, you know, to listen, to hear, to do more. But going in, they weren't even there. Do you know what I'm saying? So it's baby steps, but moving the needle is.
Yeah, but that just validates something that a lot of people I was hearing a lot today. It's the relationship.
Mm-hmm.
Is
always the relationship.
Yes.
Always the relationship.
Yes, that's where transformation takes place.
Absolutely. So thank you.
Very good. Joe, final thoughts, words?
Thank you, Shelley. Thank you, everybody. And looking at the chat, we really appreciate the comments. As Bob pointed out, you know, the value added is just tremendous. You know, we've spent really close to 4 hours here today. And, you know, I think about what we've heard, and I'd say that, you know, what is it we can take away from today that we can apply as we move forward? I mean, this is one thing to sit down and listen, but what can we go back to in our business lives and our personal lives where we can apply? I've heard and I've listened to a couple of you already mentioned that. So hopefully we can apply what we've learned today and take this forward. Also, is there opportunities to make new connections here? Yeah, you can go across here and see the different people that I'm sure maybe the first time you've heard about, connected with, but you know, let's take this a step further and make a connection outside of today's event. And also with that, is there an opportunity for some new collaboration, some new partnerships? You know, this is a regional event. It's not just a one community event, and it's not just a one organization event. What opportunities can we have to take this further and develop some new partnerships for the betterment of our region? Hopefully we can do that. And I also think there's a call to action today could surely be, and I heard this before, where, you know, there's people that you know that maybe should have been here today with us, or there may be some people that were not here that you know that they should listen to this and hear this. And this would be good for them to get more of an opportunity of seeing what's going on in this region. You know, the leaders that we're part of today, we know where we're at. What about the people outside of this meeting today? I think it's important for us to reach out and connect with them and get more people engaged and involved. And so I surely we all commend you for taking almost 4 hours of your day to be with us. And with that said, we want to make sure that we thank our event sponsors today, AT&T and US Bank, you know, our keynote speaker again, Wendy Waters-Connell, and to our panelists and all our speakers today. I mean, for sharing your knowledge and your insights is awesome. Yeah, round of applause. Congratulations. Thank you very much. You know, we appreciate you. You made this event special. Everybody's participation. You know, and also a big thank you goes to the people behind the scenes to put Think Regional on. You see a few of us here. You heard the comments, but it's a team effort. a lot of people that got this started long before I was involved and continue this. And that shows something right there, that it continues as the region continues to change, people continue to change. We still have this solid foundation of people who really think about the region and how can we make it better. So thank you for that. And thank you, leaders. Everybody here is a leader for attending and participating in today's regional event. And we look forward to seeing you again in person soon. Remember, July 13th, Regional Business Expo, and always remember to think regional. Thank you very much. Enjoy your day. Have a great weekend. Thank you, everybody.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Bye,
Be
everyone.
safe.
Bye, everyone. Thanks.
Bye.
Thank you.